name is Ebenezer Albert from the Training Center in Communication, TTC Africa, Research Capacity Building Trust based in the University of Nairobi, Iromo campus. Over this course, this training, you will gain practical knowledge and skills to strengthen your scientific writing and communicate your research more clearly and effectively. We will explore how to structure and develop strong scientific manuscripts, present research findings clearly, and write for academic and publication audiences. This training is designed to be practical and interactive, and we encourage you to actively participate, ask questions, and share your experiences throughout the sessions. Before I welcome our today's trainer, I would like to go through over some housekeeping guidelines. So kindly, as the training is going on, make sure that your mic is off unless you wish to speak, which if you wish to speak, you can raise your hand and you can be given the floor to share your thoughts or your questions. As well as just for concentration purposes, your video can also be off. This will help everyone else concentrate, including yourself. So after the session, today it will be a 1 day training session. After the session, the recordings as well as the training materials will be shared through your emails over through the um, training. I'll be sharing some materials. Make sure you sign the attendance as well. I'll be sharing it on the chat. So please help me welcome Dr. Nicholas Outa. Nicholas Outa is a specialist in research capacity development and scholarly communication with extensive experience, supporting researchers across Africa to publish, communicate, and disseminate their work effectively. Since joining the Training Center in Communication, TCC Africa, in 2019, and now serving as Research Capacity Advisor, he has trained more than 5,000 researchers from several countries through highly practical workshops on scientific writing, journal targeting, peer review processes, grant proposal development, and research ethics, as well as open access publishing. We are honored to have him facilitate this training, and we are very confident that his expertise and experience will greatly enrich your learning experience. So please help me join Dr. Nicholas Outa, and I hope you enjoy your training as well. Dr. Nicholas, the floor is yours. Nicholas, can you hear me? Just be patient with us a little bit. The trainer is joining in. Just be a little patient. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Ebenezer, I don't know whether we are cleared to take off or we are still waiting for more people, but then we don't also want to keep people waiting for too long. So you will give us direction from here, then you do an intro, and then from the intro, then we will have our half-day workshop. Thank you, Ebenezer. Back to you.
Oh, Dr. Nicholas, thank you so much. I think I don't know, we already did the intro. We were just waiting for you.
Sorry, I was muted the whole time. So yeah, so let's just start it here. And thank you everyone for finding time to join. I'm happy that so many of us are already here. We will be doing, this workshop is on scientific writing and communication. So I will be taking you through how to prepare manuscript for publication. But before we get there, I will start by, getting some things out of the way. I hope Ebenezer already introduced me. I am Dr. Nicholas Outa. I am a research capacity advisor with Training Center in Communication, that is TCC Africa, where we train, support, and empower scholars in all aspects of scientific writing and communication. I'm also a lecturer at Maseno University, and my background is in fisheries and aquaculture. So I know some of you have, I'm seeing people who have been, joining most of our trainings, and thank you for, you keep coming to these trainings, and don't take that for granted. TCC is happy that you find these sessions useful, that you even have to come more than 3-4 times, and I appreciate that as well. So anytime you get a chance to come, there's no problem. We keep learning, and I also learn from you people quite a bit every time we have this session. So again, as always, this is going to be an interactive session. So if you have any questions, you can either raise your hand or you can type it in the chat and we will be able to address it. And again, as I always tell people, I don't have all the answers. So I know we are all mixed up here. So people have different experiences and we will learn from those experiences. So it's not like I'm here to lecture you on how to do scientific writing. I know some of you know a lot, maybe sometimes even more than some of the things I know, but I am here to guide the discussion because there has to be someone guiding the discussion. So mine is to guide the discussion, but I don't have all the answers. I'm just going to, facilitate the discussion. So before I get into how to prepare a manuscript, a scientific manuscript, I want us to start from the beginning because you can only prepare a manuscript that has been developed out of an idea, because you cannot go out and start writing a manuscript if you did not go through the phase of research idea conceptualization. So how do we conceptualize a research idea or a researchable idea? You could have all these things jumbled up in your head, but you have to think of how do I filter out everything else and just remain with what is researchable and something that I can go out there, either write a proposal or conduct experiments and then finally get data that I can now use to prepare a manuscript. So I want us to start from there. How do we come up with a researchable idea? Because that is the basis of everything. Otherwise, without that, then you might end up having data that is not well thought out, and then you are now stuck. You cannot write a thesis, not a thesis, but thesis, and also a transcript, not a transcript, a manuscript for publication. So let's go back there before we come to the manuscript itself. So I will do a short presentation just to help us with our thinking, and then we will see how to move from there. So I will start my I hope I will be visible because I want people to put a face to the voice before. So this is the face behind the voice that you'll be listening to for the next 3.5 hours, or maybe 3 hours. So sometimes it's good to reconcile the face with the voice. So now that you have reconciled the two, I will switch off my video and share my screen, and then we start how we go into research idea conceptualization. So I will share this and we go. So as I said, this is just a small part where I'll be getting out some things. I'll be getting some things out of the way, because if you have an idea that is well thought out, then the other parts, the entire journey now becomes a bit easier because there is clarity in it. But if you don't have an idea that is well thought out, then you could be having data, but because you didn't think through it, you find you have data that is useless, so to speak. So how do we develop a research idea? But then let's start by why research ideas matter. One, it is the foundation of your entire PhD or master's journey. So if you are doing a PhD or master's, then the research idea development is the foundation of the entire journey, because that is where you will be told what is it that you want to do. And if you don't have it thought out, then you are stuck. Okay? So it determines originality and contribution, influences funding opportunities, depending on what idea we are looking at, affects publication potential, and shapes your future career trajectory. So if you have a well thought out idea with clearly defined research gaps and stuff like this, then the potential of you publishing a paper are higher than if you just have something that does not have a tail or an end or a head. Okay, so because today we are talking about scientific writing and publication, it would be nice that we understand that one of the reasons why research idea matters is that it affects your potential to publish. Okay, so the key message here is a poorly conceived idea cannot be rescued by sophisticated methods. So if you have sophisticated methods, but the idea was poorly conceived, then still it's not really going to help you. Okay, so many students or studies fail because they address questions that are already answered or questions that lack significance. So that is the trap that we don't want to fall into. But then we are developing an idea. But then what are the characteristics of a good PhD research idea or a master? Let's just say just a good research idea. One, it has to be original. So it must add new knowledge or new perspective to the field. So if you are doing research that is not contributing to any new knowledge, then you know that idea has a problem, okay? Then it has to be significant, meaning that it has to address an important problem or knowledge gap. So if you realize that your idea is not answering any significant problem, then there's a problem there. So these are the things you need to look out for. So even as you come up with your ideas, keep asking these questions, okay? It has to be feasible. So it must be achievable with available time, resources, and skills. You don't want to develop an idea and you take it to your supervisor or take it to whoever you are taking it to, and then they tell you that, do you know that we will need 17 million shillings to execute this? And then you are now stuck because then you think, oh, okay, I had a very good idea. I know there's a knowledge gap. But then the feasibility now becomes a problem. So you have to bring all this into the box when you are thinking about also originality, significance, feasibility, and then also it has to be ethical. So you want to be sure that the idea of the research I'm proposing will be conducted with integrity and in a way that respect ethical principles. Then it has to be researchable. Okay, so meaning that it can be investigated systematically. You could have an idea that is not researchable completely. Now, these ideas depend on how you want to do them, because then maybe you are developing a proposal idea for a developmental grant, for example. So it's not something that you are going out there to collect data, and you don't want to collect measurable data or something that you are going to use to analyze data and stuff. But then if it is something that you are doing for academia, then you must make sure that it's something you can investigate systematically, okay? Then it has also to be relevant to current challenges, okay? So you must address contemporary issues and real-world needs. You don't want to deal with an idea whose time has passed. So let's say you are in the field of malaria research, and maybe there are already certain breakthroughs that already were achieved, and then you are still doing that. Unless you are poking holes into what already was discovered, then now we can say, okay, you are trying to figure out if there's any new knowledge that can be generated. But if it is not addressing contemporary issues, and that's why when you're developing an idea, you must go back into your field and see, what is that contemporary thing? What is the current problem that is in my field that requires a solution, okay? Then sometimes you also need to think about, is it aligned with your supervisor's expertise and institutional priorities, okay? So that is when, if you already have an idea of whom I want to supervise me, Some universities will tell you that fine, we allocate supervisors, but we give you the leverage. If you have any supervisor in mind, then you can bring us that supervisor. You can recommend a supervisor. So if you have a preference to a specific supervisor, then you must have an idea that aligns with their expertise. Otherwise, they will tell you, fine, you want me to supervise you, but I am not an expert in macroinvertebrate, aquatic macroinvertebrates, for example. So then you realize, hey, this person is an aquaculture scientist, but then they don't know all these other things around zooplankton, phytoplankton. So these are things you must think about. So the checklist is, can the idea generate new knowledge? Can it be completed within the 2 to 3 years, within the time frame of my study, PhD or master's? Or can we access required data and resources? So we are almost there, so that we get into the actual writing. But then where do we get research ideas from? Because somebody would say, how will I even, when I sit down, in which directions do I look so that I can be able to start seeing, potential areas of research, okay? There is personal observations. You could be walking around and then you have your own observations, either at your place of work or within the university or just in the society in general. You could see that people have been struggling to manage organic waste, for example, in your area. And then you're like, I think there's something I can write something about so that I do research on to why people keep dumping here, even though they have been told not to dump in specific areas. So it could be a very simple thing, but it could be based on your personal observations. Professional experience, this is also one area. You are in the industry, you are working in the aquaculture industry or in the hospitality industry, for example, or whatever place. And then you look at what is happening in the industry, and then you realize, hey, people are struggling with this, or people within my industry are struggling with this specific problem. This is something I can do a research on and just try to find solutions, okay? Literature gaps also give you research ideas, policy challenges, industry needs, community problems, emerging technologies, and discussions with experts. So these are areas where you can get ideas about research, because somebody would ask, what inspired this? Then you'd say, in my course of work, I always realized that people are managing their finances, without any organized systems. And that's how I came up with this idea, because then that's a problem I need to solve. So those are the potential areas where you can get your research ideas from, okay? So, for example, declining fish catches in inland fisheries may inspire research on climate impacts, governance, or aquaculture alternatives. So, you see, if you go to the lake all the time, or the people around you keep speaking about going to the lake and getting nothing or getting very little fish, then you can think, okay, so what is happening? What is causing this? Is it possible that I can write a proposal or an idea around this so that I go to do research on? Is it a problem to do with climate impacts, for example, or governance, compliance, and all these things? So, is it possible that we can think of aquaculture alternatives to boost the amount of fish available to consume? So, these are just an idea of how then you get your ideas. But then, how do we find research gaps? I kept talking about research gaps, because then if there's no gap you are feeling, then your research idea will make very little sense. So you will be asked, what is the research gap you are feeling? Okay. You need to review existing literature, and that could be your very good starting point, okay? So understand what has already been studied so that you know, okay, from literature I'm seeing that a lot has been studied on A, B, C, D, but then there's very little, or there's no information completely regarding the specific idea. Now, sometimes people think that when we are talking about a research idea, we want to look for something completely new that no one has ever studied. Sometimes that's difficult to achieve, okay? That sometimes it's very difficult to achieve. So what happens in most cases, you are not reinventing the wheel. The wheel is always there. Sometimes it's just modifying the wheel. And if the wheel is not rolling so smoothly, then you look at, does it have a puncture? How do we deal with that? So I'm introducing air into the wheel so that it can roll. I'm just giving an example. So sometimes you find that a study has been done on a specific aspect, but there's a small detail about it that has remained understudied for a long time. So based on literature, you can always tease out and say, okay, I have seen that the research that has been done on black soldier fly as an alternative source of protein has mostly focused on the production aspect or biomass. But very little has been done on the microbial community that that goes with the production of black soldier fly. So you see, it's not a completely new idea, but then there's a small little aspect of it that still remains. Okay. You can also identify inconsistencies. So you can look for conflicting results or unanswered questions. So you find, okay, a lot of people have done, but in their recommendations, they keep recommending that further studies are required around this. More studies are required to understand ABCD. Because then when you read papers or when you read thesis, you find researchers recommending areas for further study. So you can always identify areas, okay? Then pinpoint missing elements. So find areas, populations, or variables that are underexplored, okay? So you would find, for example, that there is an aspect of, let me give you an example. Let's say about teenage pregnancy that has been done in pastoral communities, around pastoral communities, but then it has not been done in a specific set of population. So you would say, okay, I know research has been doing this in Masai land or around Turkana or around Luo Nyanza, but then there is very little that has been done about this specific small community in Lamu, for example. So let me go and study that community. So meaning that this thing has been studied, but the problem is that there's a specific area or a specific set of population where not much has been done. So these are potential areas where you can now use to say, you can use to say, this is the gap I'm feeling because everything has been understood, but regarding this specific set of population. So there is this aspect area that remains understudied, okay? Then you also need to assess relevance. So ensure the gap is important and worth investigating. You will find there's a knowledge gap, but it's not even worth studying. And that's why people have been avoiding it for all that while, okay? Then you must also define your contribution, okay? Formulate a research question that addresses the gap. So it means that sometimes you could have identified a gap, but if you don't show us very well how the gap is going to be answered by your research, then that gap remains useless. So just identifying the gap is not enough until you can convert that into a research question or an objective that can convince me that, hey, this is the gap, this is how you're going to fill it, okay? So again, don't be worried. All these notes will be shared with you, everything else after the training. So you will still go ahead to, you can easily read them. So how do you do this? One, we've talked about conducting a preliminary literature review. I think I'm not going to talk about this so much because we talked about this is where you get to understand what has been done and what has not been done yet. So do literature review. The truth is, if you want to, when people graduate in Kenya, you see they are told that they're given the power to read and to write all that pertains to their degree. So it means that the universities or the scholars understand that for you to be able to write, you must read. So if you don't want to read, then you cannot be a good writer. So the truth is, when you want to identify research gaps, you must read, okay? So you must read to understand existing knowledge, identify gaps and controversies, avoid duplication, and discover theoretical foundations, okay? So you can identify relevant theories and models that guide your research in the process of doing your literature review, okay? So this you can get from peer-reviewed journals, books, and all these other things. And the common databases that people search for information are also varied depending on what databases you use. The other thing is aligning research ideas with global priorities or local and global priorities. So when you have a research idea, because then part of what you are going to do when you start the actual writing, like you're writing a proposal or something, you must convince us that this idea, how do you put it within the context of the current situation within your field. So you can situate it within your field, but we also want to see how does it align with the global priorities or local and global priorities. So let's say you are doing research in Uganda, for example. You are a Ugandan scholar. Uganda would want to know, or Ugandan scholars would want to know, how does this align with our priorities? So or anything that is currently ongoing. So like in the Kenyan context, we have like our Vision 2030, we have the bottom-up agenda, for example, or the SDGs or all these things. So just make sure that where does it fit? Because you will be asked, and like when you're writing the significance of your study, you will be asked, how does this contribute to what what SDGs does this help us achieve? So these are the things that you can think about. And if you align them very well, the benefit is that it increases the funding and collaboration opportunities. So if you align it very well, people will look at it and say, okay, we are seeing that this is going to help us achieve Vision 2030, or it's going to contribute to food security or public health. And this is something I'm interested in. So I think we can collaborate. Okay. So these are the things that you look at when you are also identifying, because then identifying a problem that does not align then becomes a problem that is not going to help anyone. So somebody will tell you, fine, the problem looks good, but we are not interested because it's not. So then how then do we develop our research questions? So depending on the kind of study you're doing, sometimes you do research questions or research hypotheses. Hypothesis is when we are testing relationships, relationships basically. But research questions is where we don't have any testable relationships. So we just want to inquire and know what the problem is happening, or how things happen. Okay. So research questions must be clear, focused, answerable, and significant. So if you, let's say, if the broad idea is climate change and fisheries, then the research question could be, how does climate variability affect fish productivity and fisher livelihoods in Lake Victoria? Okay, so it has to be very specific to so many things that if somebody reads it, they know the question you want to answer, and then the gap is very easy to see from your questions. Okay. So that is why it is important for you to move from a broader idea to a focused research question. Okay. So why is this important? This is important because, let's say you come and tell me that, Nicholas, I think I'm so interested in climate change and how it relates to fisheries. Now, that is a broad idea. Then I will ask you, what specific aspect of climate change are you interested in investigating? And then you will tell me, maybe this weather variabilities and all rainfall patterns and all these things. Then I'll say, okay, now you've talked to me about the climate change aspect. What about the fisheries aspect? So which fisheries aspect do you want to link to that specific climate change aspect? Then you'll tell me, okay, I want to link it to fish productivity and another thing. I'll say, okay. Now then you want to see how then that specific aspect of climate change affect these specific aspects of fisheries. Right? Yes. When you tell me that, then now we find how then we can craft a question that encompasses those two things. Okay. So when you have a broader idea, start breaking it down into small chunks that you can swallow. Okay. So there is always what we always call in the PICO framework, and this one I always tell people sometimes, where it helps you transform a broad topic into a clear researchable question. You remember what we talked about right now? So you have the population, stroke the problem, who or what is the focus of your study? So what is the focus of my study? My study is focusing on this and that, and who will be part of it? So you can either talk about the actual problem or the population that the problem is affecting, okay? So then the intervention. What is the main intervention or exposure? So what is the main intervention that you are proposing to intervene that is going to help this problem, okay? Then the comparison is, what is the alternative or comparison, and then what is the outcome? Because then the comparison is where you are going to tell us where the gap is. Okay, so you're going to tell us, compared to the conventional way of producing fish, I want to investigate whether this new intervention is going to bring a change. So you say the problem is low productivity in aquaculture systems, and maybe the population that is affected is the smallholder aquaculture farmers. Okay, so what intervention are you proposing? I'm proposing a new methodology that is called CPT. So this is carbonized pond technology. Okay, so you are introducing a very nice thing, but what are you comparing it to in your research? I'm comparing it to conventional ponds that do not have anything. Just have water, and then you put your fish there. Then what is the outcome that you think will come as a result of your intervention, okay? So basically, these are some of the things that can help you. I think I talked about this a little bit. Then you need to also scope, okay? So scoping your research. So you must define the boundaries of your research. Otherwise, again, as I said, if your research idea is too broad, then it's very difficult to tell us how you are going to execute it. If you just tell me that you want to do a research on the impacts of climate change on fish populations in Lake Victoria, then I have a problem with that because it is too broad, okay? So clearly define the scope of your study. This helps you ensure focus, feasibility, and meaningful results, okay? So topic boundaries, what is included and what is excluded. So for example, if you are doing research on, let's say you are doing the research on the influence of alcohol consumption on life expectancy of women, for example, or of men, as an example. So that's your research. So I want to do a longitudinal study to see if alcohol consumption has any influence on life expectancy of men. So you must tell us that, fine, my research is just focusing on alcohol consumption. I'm not going to look at women. I'm not going to look at women. I'm not going to look at children, for example. So you tell us so that when I'm looking at your idea, I will not start asking, what about women? What would the results be like when you studied adolescents or children or stuff like this? I'll tell you that, no, but I've defined that mine is only going to focus on this specific area. So you must set the topic boundaries, okay? Then sometimes it's also good to define the geographic scope. So what will be the study, where will the study be conducted? So that if somebody says maybe a specific area in Kisumu, and that's why it is always important when you are defining your study area, you must tell us all the details that are there and give us justification for why you chose that specific area for your study, okay? What time period will it cover? So remember, there is, when I was talking about the longitudinal study and cross-sectional study, longitudinal study is something that takes a study that you recruit subjects. For example, you recruit houses, and then you intervene, and then you follow the impacts or the influence of that intervention over time. So that's a longitudinal study. But a cross-sectional one is where you're just going to get a snapshot. So you go into households and just get a snapshot of what is happening at that time. So you need to tell us if it's a longitudinal study, for example, if it's an experiment or some ecological monitoring, how long will it take? Will it cover 2 different seasons so that we see if seasons have influence or an impact on whatever it is, the phenomenon that you're trying to study? Then the population, what will be studied? So the population of the sample. So what population will be studied? How many will they be? All these things. How will you do the sampling? What will influence that sampling strategy? All those things. And then the key variables, okay? So what are the key variables? What are you trying to measure? Like when you are developing your conceptual framework or your conceptual framework, you must know what are the dependent variables, what are the independent variables, what are the intervening variables, what are the control variables, for example. So all this you must have an idea about this when you are still developing your idea, because that is when you will know how each variable links to the other, okay? A well-defined scope prevents your study from becoming too broad or unimaginable, okay? So ask yourself, what exactly do I want to find out? Where and when will I conduct the study? Who or what is my focus? What are the key factors to examine? And what is realistic within my resources, okay? So you don't want to, come up with a study that your supervisor will tell you, fine, it's a good idea, but then the university does not have all this money, or the university does not have this kind of expertise to help you through this idea. Then you are now stuck because then you don't know what to do. So that is one of the reasons why the focus has to be very clear, so that you know that I am able to know if somebody, because the questions you need to ask is, what do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? How will you do it? Where will you do it? And then so what? So what is the significance? I've collected all this data. To what end? Or what problem is this trying to solve? Or what questions will it answer? Okay. So these are all the research designs. I'm not going to talk about this. We'll talk about this later on a little bit. So there are different types of research designs, and choosing the right approach depends on what kind of study you are doing. So research designs provide the blueprint for how data will be collected, analyzed, and interpreted, okay? So you have the exploratory design that explores a new or little understood problem to gain insights and ideas. So in this case, then you are not correlating or relating with anything. You are saying, okay, I'm just going to do an exploratory study. I'm just going out there to find what is there so that if there's new knowledge, then I gain it and then bring it into. Then there's the descriptive design where it describes characteristics or functions of a population or situation. So here you want to describe how things happen within a population. Correlational design examines the relationship between two or more variables. Experimental design, so this could take different designs. So experimental design can be completely randomized, factorial, all these things. So experimental designs are, they test cause and effect relationship by manipulating variables. So you say, I'm setting up experiments and I'm treating this, let's say you're trying to look at the influence of a specific fertilizer or a specific organic manure on the growth performance of a specific plant. So you are going to treat them differently. So it means that you are manipulating the treatments just to see if there is any cause effect. Then there is the mixed method design, where it combines qualitative and quantitative methods for a deeper understanding. So you can go and collect some quantitative data, and then you go ahead to collect some more qualitative data to help you understand the quantitative data. So let's say you are going out to households and looking at their level of income and their livelihoods and all these things. But then for you to be able to understand why things behave the way they do. So let's say you've gotten certain answers in your quantitative data that are difficult to interpret. This is when you now go and get some qualitative data by doing focus group discussions or key informant interviews, where you will be able to ask, okay, this is what I'm observing. This is the trend I observed in the households that I interviewed. What do you think this means as somebody within the sector? Then now they will give you qualitative data or qualitative information that will help you understand why the income is fluctuating during a specific time of the month. They will tell you, okay, I work within the fishery sector, and I know that around this time, this phenomenon occurs, and this is the time when fishermen get a lot of fish, or fish kills happen within the lake, and that is, so you will get to understand, okay, now that explains the difference in the catches that I was seeing during this month. So that is a mixed design, and it sometimes gives you a lot of understanding of the data that you already have. But then there are common mistakes in research development that we need to avoid when the topics are too broad. So overly broad topics are difficult to manage and lead to vague outcomes. Lack of novelty, poor literature review, method-driven rather than problem-driven research. So when you focus on methods first, then it can result in irrelevant or forced problems. So if you just want to force your research into a specific method without thinking through the idea how then this is going to solve a specific problem, then you might end up getting results that are forced or irrelevant because it did not focus on the problem, it focused on the method, okay? Then also ignoring feasibility becomes a problem for your research idea development, because you can have a very good idea, but if you don't have the resources, including the expertise to do it, you could have the money, but there's no one to help you do it. Maybe you don't have the expertise yourself, or you could have the expertise, but there's no money to achieve that. Maybe there's a specific kind of analysis that you want to do. Your laboratory does not have that capability, and it has to be sent, the samples have to be sent out, maybe even abroad for analysis. If you don't have that money, then that problem is a problem with feasibility. So you are told that fine, the idea is good, it is researchable, but then we don't have the money, okay? So then there's also chasing trends without expertise. So right now, everybody wants to be an expert in AI, but then if you don't have that expertise, then you realize that you are following trends without the right skills or interest can lead to weak outcomes, okay? Then weak alignment with societal needs. You have a very good idea, but you don't have, it lacks real-world relevance. So let's say you have come up with a research idea to do a study on something, let's say on alternative sources of protein in animal feed. And everyone is telling you that, right now, black soldier fly or BSF is the in thing. That is where you are going. That is the direction the world is taking. then you also join the bandwagon. Join the bandwagon, and then you get out there and realize that everyone is now studying the potential of black soldier fly. And then now there is, where are you going with this? Okay. And then so it means that a good research starts with the right idea. If you have the right idea, that is where you start all these things. So what are the research idea overview? So basically, when you are doing research, you identify the problem, review literature, formulate research questions or hypotheses, design the study, collect data, analyze the data, interpret and report findings. And that is the point where we are now going to. So you are interpreting and reporting findings by communicating it either in form of a publication, a conference proceeding, or a presentation, or a blog, or whatever it is. But it's about putting this information out there. Okay, so basically that is the general overview of how then research is done, from idea conceptualization all the way to research. So that was the first part. Thank you for that. That was the first part of this whole thing, so that when we get into the actual writing, you have the idea of how to develop these research ideas at the back of your head. At this time, we want to transition to the next section, but I want us to have a few minutes of plenary. We could have some 10 minutes if there are questions or areas of, if somebody wants to also add something to this, you just unmute and add whatever it is. It could be a question, it could be just an idea you also want to throw in as we now move into the actual writing. Again, these notes will be shared, so you will be able to have a chance to also follow through with them again later on and use them for your revision. But we are now, we have a plenary, a little bit of some plenary. If there are questions or if there are anything that anybody wants to add, then we can move forward. Yes, Asiat.
Good morning, sir. Thank you very much for this session. Sorry, sir, please, from another point of view, some people, they said that it is always good to start with the research methodology. That one will lead to the question that it is easier that way. But now that you are saying that it must not be method-driven, that it must be problem-driven. So I'm confused in a way, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Does anybody have any opinion on that? He says that there are some people who recommend that we start from the methodology and then we move to the problem. But I'm now telling you that you need to start by figuring out what the problem is before you find a method of solving this problem. Who wants to say something before I say? I say this now plenary. We are just throwing in our experiences. And again, among scholars, whatever we throw in are just opinions. So you have, you are entitled to your opinion. You can give us what you think. His question was very clear. So does anybody have any response to this? Anybody who wants just to give their idea?
Thank you, Nicholas.
Yes.
From what she has just stated, it sounds like when you start with the methodology, then you have to forge a problem to fit within those methodologies that you have set. Not that it's the problem which is determining which methods to be used. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So it's like you are starting from the end, and then you want to say that I want to find. So how do I put it? I think you start from the methodology, and then you have to look for a problem that will fit within that methodology. So it becomes a bit of a challenge because I already have the answer, but then I must force a question that will answer this, that will have whose answer I have. So you are going to the war, and you already have set out the outcome of this war, but then you must find a way of forcing this battle to fall into the strategy that you already have laid. It becomes a bit of a challenge. Any other person who also wants to give their opinion before I also give my take? As I say, this is an open space where we just give our opinions.
Yes.
Yes.
Please go ahead. Morning, Nicholas.
Morning.
Yes, Dr. Yes. Thank you so much. I think the whole thing is about the problem. The central idea of the research is the problem. The problem is what is the problem? And then now you move to how will you solve the problem? And that is why the problem comes first and the methodology follows later. So that is how it can't be the other way around. It can reverse the whole process. So it is what, which is the problem, and how is the methodology to solve the problem. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So I also believe that we must identify what problem is, because there are so many ways of killing a rat. So the most important thing is we have a rat in the house, we want to kill it, or we have a snake in the house, we want to kill the snake. But you can't say that I've already prepared poison, or I've already boiled hot water. Now what I want to do is make sure that a snake comes into this house so that I can burn it. It becomes a bit of a challenge that way, because then if you try to burn and then you realize you killed a frog instead of the methodology worked, but it worked for a wrong problem. So somebody will say, why were you forcing that this is the only way you could be able to solve this problem? So because when you are presented with the problem, when you start with the problem, then it's very easy, because then it triggers your mind to think, how do I solve this problem? Then you put in you think of several methodologies. Do I go out interviewing people? Do I need to do focus group discussion, or do I need to do just quantitative data, just a structured questionnaire will suffice? Or if I do structured questionnaire and I don't do focus group discussion and informant interviews, then I'm going to miss out on specific aspects, because the problem I know can only be solved if I get all this kind of information. But if you already have that, I am going to do interviews, I'm going to interview these specific people, and then you say, after thinking through this, what problem am I trying to solve? Then you now think of, okay, I want to craft a problem that can be solved using this methodology that I've already crafted. Then you are forcing the problem. So it becomes a problem, because the problem itself now becomes a problem to solve. So my long and short of this is, you need to think, you find out the problem and then think of how to solve it. That is, now think of the problem, then think of the methodology. Any other comment? We still have another 4 minutes for the plenary. Any other thing that maybe anybody wants to add? It would be nice to also just reemphasize something about this idea conceptualization. Yes, Kamau, go ahead.
Good morning. Maybe we'll just like clarity on something. So there are those who say that there's no new knowledge that you're generating when it comes to research, that you ought, just deal with the existing gaps that that are in existence, that is. But for you to come up with new knowledge, you need to go towards the roots for the clinical trials and what have you. What's your take on it?
Again, as I say, sometimes in our context, it's very difficult to come up with completely new idea that no one has ever studied. And fine, it's possible to do that. People come up with completely new ideas. And like in the field of medicine, for example, somebody has identified a cure to a specific disease that people have been struggling with. But in most cases, you identify a gap. Maybe sometimes you find it's just a small aspect of that area that has not been studied, but the entire area has quite a bit of research on. So it could be just the methodology, for example. So methodological gaps can also be there. You say, this method has been used for a long time to solve this problem. Is it possible for me to try and explore a different methodology and see if I'm going to get the same or different or even better results? So the kind of knowledge, the kind of research gaps you're going to identify depends on the area you are dealing with. So there are areas where you are just going to deal with the population. So you're saying that there's this, could be geographical or even a gap in the population of study. So you'd say, this study has been done in this geographical area, but there's no information on this lake, for example, or on this region. So sometimes finding completely new ideas, and that's why in research, when you go to Google Scholar, for example, they say you are standing on the shoulders of giants, or standing on the shoulders of others, meaning that you are going to build your research on whatever is already existing. So sometimes you just convince the panel by saying, I've read through literature, I have realized that everyone all the research that is out there has been based on this methodology. I'm trying a new methodology. Or research that is out there has been dealing with this specific aspect of this subject, but there's this small aspect that everyone or most of the studies have ignored. So that is why I'm interested in this. So the research gap can be a very small thing, but the way you bring it out is what counts. So fine, you still can go into those clinical trials and policy documents just to see if there are explicitly new areas that you can venture into. But for masters and sometimes even PhD, you realize that the knowledge gap can be a very, very tiny thing within your area. And for ecological studies, sometimes you just find somebody says the last study that was done on this subject in this lake or in this forest or in this aspect was done 13 years ago, 15 years ago, and there's evidence that a lot has happened within the lake over the past 1 decade, and therefore it means that the population dynamics or the ecology of the lake has changed, and then there's therefore need for new information. So you can always justify it in whichever way, but sometimes, I'm not saying it is impossible, but it's sometimes very difficult to find completely new ideas that no one has ever studied. Any other person before we transition now to the actual writing? Any gentleman or gentle lady? No, ladies are not gentle. That's why we say gentle ladies and gentlemen. No. Oh, ladies are gentle, so we don't need to add the word gentle ladies. They are gentle by nature. So any lady or gentleman who has something to, let me just read what is in the chat, but also if you have anything to say before we transition, you have the chance to do that.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
You've about
your audio is breaking, so I'm struggling to hear you. This is Lydia, right?
Yeah.
Yes, Lydia, go ahead, but I'm struggling to, your audio is breaking quite.
Yes. My question is, should we identify more than 3 or 4 or you need only to have one?
Should we identify?
In the gap. You come up with one gap or the gap more 2.
Well, I'm struggling to get you clearly. I only had 3 or 2, more than one. Your audio is breaking. Try again. If it's not if it's not clear, then you can type in the chat. Then I can address it from the chat.
Yes, sir. No, I was talking about identification of the gaps.
Yes.
Can you have more than 2 gaps to be identified?
Now, what happens in this case, and I think this is part of what I always tell students is, when you write the statement of the problem section of your proposal, or if you're writing a paper, then of course you must tell us why the significance. In the background, you must tell us why this paper is being written even in the first place. It means that you could have the main problem, but then there are small questions. Those are the objectives. There are the small gaps that you must also fill. I always tell people when I'm reading your statement of the problem section and I don't see your objectives insinuated as gaps within your statement of the problem section, then I will ask you, how did you come up with specific objective 1, 2, and 3? Because in your statement of the problem, they have not been identified as areas that require to be filled. So you could have one big gap. Let me give an example. I don't know what your area of research is, so that I give you an example that makes sense. Lydia? Hello? Okay, so let me give you an example from my field because I can't hear you. So let's say you have read through literature and you have realized that everyone is looking for alternative sources of protein in fish feed formulation. And everyone is looking at the inclusion levels of BSF, black soldier fly, black soldier fly, black soldier fly. And then you say, everyone is studying black soldier fly, but I'm not seeing anyone looking at the microbial communities that are associated with black soldier fly production. So you are saying, okay, I think there's an area, there's a gap, because then we also need to understand the microbial communities that are associated with this process. So instead of going for the inclusion rates, you are saying, I'm going to study black soldier fly, but the specific area I'm focusing on is the microbial community associated with the black soldier fly production. So you have identified a gap. But this gap has, for you to fill this gap, there are some small sub-gaps, that's how maybe to call it, some small sub-problems that you need to understand, because then you cannot understand this in totality. So you want to understand so one of them is you want to identify or to understand the actual microbial communities that are associated with this, their succession rates, the conditions under which they thrive, and maybe at what time do they start being produced within the system. So you see, you have the problem that you are looking at is the microbial community associated with this. But for you to understand the microbial communities, there are specific questions you are now asking yourself. So these specific questions are the sub-problems that you are trying to solve so that you answer the big question that you had. So the overall question was, what are the microbial communities associated with BSF production? But for me to answer that big question, I cannot answer it like that. I want to start by identifying the actual microbial communities. I want to quantify them. I want to look at succession. I want to look at, for example, the onset of their production. So you see now you have identified one big problem, but within this problem, you have identified some sub-problems. So these sub-problems are what are going to form your research questions or research-specific objectives. So basically, that is how you move with it. And that's why you use what we call a problem tree. So the problem tree is where you have the problem in the middle, and then you have the roots, where what is causing this problem. Okay? So the problem is we don't understand the microbial communities associated with BSF production. That is the problem. But then why don't we understand it? Or what aspect of it don't we understand? The aspect of it that we don't understand include the identities of these microbes, their succession, the quantities at different level growth stages. At what time do they subside? Do they get do they get ingested into the BSF body, that it can be transferred to humans and fish and stuff like this? So you see, within your problem, you now dissect it into smaller areas or gray areas that you want to identify and understand. So that is how then you are going to write your statement of the problem section, because you'll say, this is what I'm asking myself, but all these other small questions are also still not understood. So that's why I'm doing research to focus on A, B, so that when you write your specific objectives, I will understand where these specific objectives came from. That is the answer to your question. Any other person with any other question for the next 3 minutes before we go into the second phase of this? I'll check what is in the chat and then I will transition. I'm seeing one question here. Okay. You are just being encouraged that if your audio has a problem, then you can type in the chat. So let's get into now. We have developed a good idea. We have a researchable idea. We have gone to our supervisor, and the supervisor has already accepted, and we have gone out to collect data, because I don't want to bore all of us with all those things. It's about, and this course, of course, this training was about scientific writing and publishing. So it's about how do I prepare a good manuscript for submission for publication. So I will get into that section where we will now discuss how to prepare a journal that, not a journal, but how to prepare a manuscript that you want to publish. What stages do you need to go through, and how do we make each section strong enough so that when we send it out, it's not rejected. Let me just get my slide here. Okay. So this second section, we are going to have a break in between, and Ebenezer will let us know when we have our short break, and then we will come back to complete. So this second part is now talking about scientific manuscript preparation and publication. Okay, how do I prepare a manuscript that I want to? Because let's say your idea, you had a good idea, you went out, collected data, analyzed that data, and now you are at a point where you want to write a manuscript, prepare a manuscript, and submit it for publication. But why is it important for us to publish? I think let's start from there. We saw why it is important for us to start with ideas. Now, publishing transforms research into impact. We have people working in different institutions. I know some of us are also here, where you do a lot of research. There are so many research institutions. For example, in Kenya, as an example, we have research institutions like Kenya Marine and Fisheries Research Institute. We have KEMRI. Sometimes you do a lot of research, but you call yourself a researcher, but you're not publishing. So the first thing that people ask you when you tell them you're a researcher, they ask, "What papers have you published?" Then you tell them, "No, I've not published anything." Then they will start asking, "Yeah, okay, you're a researcher who does not publish." So it means that the only way to transform your research into impact is by publishing. Okay, so you can publish them in several ways. You could have journal articles like the one we are talking about today. You could have them in blogs. You could have them as conference proceedings, or you could have them as posters and whatever it is. But publishing enhances research visibility. Okay, so it increases the discoverability of your work to the global scientific community. If you are writing if you are doing research and not publishing, then your research is not visible, because no one will come to your computer and see the kind of research you are doing unless you choose to share it with us. Okay, then it also enhances funding competitiveness. Okay, a strong publication record strengthens grants proposal and attracts funding. So if you have applied for a grant and you have not published any paper completely, and you are the lead researcher applying for that grant, if someone else submits a proposal and they have a stronger publication record, then there are chances that they will be taken more seriously than you. Okay, unfortunately, that's how it happens. Then there's the research impact. So this is where it generates citations, drives innovation, and solves real-world problems. If you don't publish, there's no way people are going to cite your work, and there's no way people are going to base their writing on what you have done. Okay, then there's knowledge dissemination. I think that's obvious. Career projection. There are so many institutions where you can only be promoted if you have attained certain publication points. Okay. Then there's policy influence. Then open science also promotes transparency, data sharing. So these are things I think we will talk about a little bit about open science. And then global cooperation. So it helps you connect with researchers worldwide and build productive partnerships. If you're not publishing any paper, how will you connect with people from within your field or from outside your field? Because then they will be, the first thing people do, especially these researchers, when you send them an email, "Hey, Professor so-and-so, I'm so-and-so, I'm doing research on this area, or I'm interested in doing research in this area. Is it possible that we can work together?" The first thing is they are going to Google Scholar just to check if you've written anything. If they find that you only have one paper, they'll be like, I don't think there's someone I want to work with. Okay. Now, the other thing, and especially for young scholars, maybe you are through with your masters and you want to now apply for PhDs, and sometimes abroad or even here, there are some PhD scholarships that require you to get a supervisor or a professor in that European university to accept you in their lab before you are even considered for that fellowship. Now, in that case, you will send an email to a professor. Maybe you've seen them by reading their works, or you see what they are doing online, and you see there's someone I want to mentor me. You send them an email. The first thing they will ask for your CV. And then when they see your CV does not have any publications, the first thing they will think of is, this one does not know how to write. So this will be a baggage to this lab. So we are not really, I don't think I can work with this scholar. But if you have publications, then they will feel like, okay, this is a scholar who has even been publishing. So I think it's going to bring some value to our laboratory. So let me just accept to work with him or her. You see? So that's part of the reasons why you need to start thinking about publishing, okay? So a study that remains unpublished has virtually no scientific impact, okay? No citations, no recognition, no policy impact, no advancement, no unknown findings, nothing. So publishing is not just about career. It's about contributing to science, society, and the future. So that is the only way you can contribute to science. Otherwise, if you're not publishing your work, however good those findings are, if they stay in your computer, they're only useful to you, and the few people who can access your computer. Okay? But then we must understand the scientific publication process. I think most of us know this, but I'm still building the story. So because then we are also mixed. There are people who have never published a paper, and I think they are also eager to know what does it take or how does the entire process go. So even before we develop the actual proposal, I just want us to know, I want you to appreciate that it takes, and that's why I always tell students, when you are starting your PhD or master's, you must think of your publication plan early enough. For the students I work with, sometimes when we are developing the idea or the proposal or the concept, we start thinking of how many papers will you publish and what are the specific areas of, what are the potential papers that can come out of this, so that we draw out the publication plan very early. You will notice that the peer review process takes a long time. For those who are here, those who are published, sometimes it even goes for 2 years, a year or 2 years, depending on the journal you are dealing with. Sometimes it can be very frustrating. So if you're a student in a university, and most universities these days will require you for a master's to publish at least one paper before you defend your thesis. And for a PhD, you have to publish at least 2 papers. Now, if you didn't start your publication plan early, you will be ready with your thesis you want to submit, but then you are told you must publish, or you must have published. And the review process takes a long time. So I'm just bringing that so that you get to understand. So the publication process is from research idea development. You remember when we talked about research idea development. So identify a gap or question that needs answering. Then there's the research design. You have identified the problem. We need to design how we plan our study, formulate objectives and methodology. After that, we go into data collection, okay? After we gather data through surveys, experiments, observation, and then we analyze the data. So we analyze and interpret the data using appropriate statistical methods, and then we do the manuscript writing, which we are doing right now. Write your findings clearly and logically using the IMRAD structure. Or depending, IMRAD is just the introduction, materials and methods, research, and discussion. So you write your manuscript, then you select the right journal. So choose the most suitable journal for your work. How do you choose the most suitable journal for your work? You must look at the scope of that journal. I'll take you through journal selection criteria. So we have written our manuscript, we have selected the right journal, we have submitted. Okay? So you submit the journal, you submit your manuscript through the journal submission system. Now, when the journal is submitted, it is when you submit your manuscript, it is received by the editor. So the section editor then, as the overall editor assigns the section editor, a section editor to your paper. So what the editor does what we call just scanning. So there's the desktop review, the desktop scanning, where as an editor, I am an editor with +1, I'm an academic editor with +1. And what we do when a paper comes in is we don't do the actual peer review. As an editor, a section editor, I open that paper and do a general scan, a very quick scan of, how is the methodology arranged? Does the paper even conform to the format of the journal? What is the title? The keywords, for example. I read through a little bit of the abstract just to get a conceptual understanding, and then I go through the paper in general. So there's what we call the desktop projection, where I, as an editor, just look at that paper and say, maybe the amount of scientific information being submitted here is either too insufficient. So I just throw it back to you without being sent out through the peer review process. That is one thing. The second thing is, if I feel that, I think this can go out, then as an editor, I now send it out to peer reviewers. Now, these peer reviewers are people within your field who will ask questions, recommend corrections or improvements, and then it's up to you to work on them. So once you address the peer review comments, then you bring it back to the journal, and then the journal will take it back to the peer reviewers. The peer reviewers will be told, you gave some comments, the author or the authors have addressed them, check through the manuscript again if they have addressed them the way you expected them to be addressed. Then they will say, fine, they were addressed the way we wanted them to be addressed. We don't have further questions. Go ahead and publish the paper. Or they will say that we have checked through. the authors have addressed some, but they have not addressed everything. So we still have further questions, or we have areas that still need further clarification. Let them go and work on ABCD, then it's returned to you. So it's quite a bit of back and forth. So there's the submission, review, and this may occur multiple times. And then there's the publication if the paper is accepted. But then there are chances that a paper can also be rejected even after going through the many revision times. So you can go through the back and forth for 1 year, and then finally you're told, yeah, we cannot publish this paper. Now, for young scholars who are just starting out, and for scholars who have published papers, yeah, you know the feeling. But that is part of the journey, okay? I don't know whether, has any one of you ever experienced a rejection, and how did it make you feel? Maybe we get there before we get to the other part. Has any of you ever, I received 2 rejections last year, and I did not feel nice about them. But I reworked those manuscripts and sent them out. So how did you feel when you have you ever gotten a rejection, and how did it make you feel? Maybe somebody can just unmute and give us your experience before we move forward. So that whoever is here understands that a rejection is not something, it should not kill your spirit. It's part of the journey. Maybe can somebody share the experience with a rejection, or all of you have just been getting their papers accepted? Anybody, what was the reason for the rejection?
Thanks, Daktari. I have received several rejections, but the most recent one was on a paper we had submitted, and the general comment was that the results are too descriptive. There's no analytical perspective being brought out to sort of create room to give new knowledge, new nuance to already what exists around the topic for which we were writing. Yes. Then another one that got rejected, Daktari, after a whole year of back and forth with the journal. Eventually, the reviewers' comments seemed to indicate that the issues they raise, especially in our methodology, and I say we because it's a paper we were co-authoring with some colleagues, the issues raised around our methodology and the results and discussion had not been satisfactorily addressed even after several like 2-3 reviews and resubmissions. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And I'm curious, these 2 papers that were rejected, did you rework them and send them somewhere else, or you just said, I resign to my fate, I will sit here? That is, how did you go about this?
So Daktari, thank you. You know, the one I mentioned first is a recent rejection. I'm still recovering. The other one I've been reworking for most of this year, and part of the motivation to join this session today is to sort of get some new insight to look at those 2 papers, because I think I'm stuck on what else we can do, what are we not doing right. Yes, so I hope I can pick them up. Thank you.
Yeah, I hope so too. But also the thing is, sometimes the other thing that I always tell scholars sometimes is you can always sometimes change the journal if they have, if it has been outrightly rejected in one journal, then it means they're not going to publish it. So if you feel, because then it depends on the reviewers, people are also different. We are all experts in those fields, but then we see things very differently. So it might not be that your paper is completely bad, or that the methodology of the discussion is completely flawed. You just try another journal. Sometimes I just rework, because then the good thing is when a paper undergoes those kinds of review, it improves the quality of the paper. So when you try it out in another journal, you could be lucky. You give it to someone else, and then that person says, yeah, I think it's a good paper. You just need to rework ABCD. And then I have done it several times. When they reject it, I just send it to another journal. I just rework it a little bit and send it to another journal. And then sometimes you find it gets published. So I think one thing that you have brought out, and especially for those who are just starting out, they know very well that you don't see these accomplished researchers and think that their papers have never been. You can, you can be publishing for 20 years and then your papers still get rejected. So the only thing we know is the successful ones, the ones that were published. No one knows how many of them were rejected 17 times before they finally got published. So I still also just strongly advise that you rework them. But if the journal had already, because then the problem sometimes is if a journal has already rejected a paper, there's a way they look at it. The editor sometimes says, I already, because the truth of the matter is that getting peer reviewers is a tall order. It's very difficult. I sometimes reach out to so many reviewers and you either don't get response or most of them just decline. So sometimes when a paper is already rejected by a journal, you will try your best to rework it and send it to them, and then they will be like, this one was really rejected. They'll just throw it back to you, or they will just get excuses of delaying until you get tired. So my sincere advice is you can try out another journal. That is what I always advise people. Now, when your paper is already accepted, then it gets published. So then we get from the revisions and then publication. So your paper is accepted and published in the journal, and then you share your research with the scientific community and the world. So part of what we also train people at TCC Africa is how to enhance your research visibility, because if a paper is published and you don't talk about it, or you don't, let us know that it was published, then there's a problem. Okay, so a well-executed publication process ensures high-quality research is credible, visible, and impactful. So basically, that is the process, and I think I was just bringing it out for maybe those who are just starting out and you don't know what the process looks like, so that when it takes long, you don't think, okay, why is it taking a year? This one should be out in 2 months. It depends on the journal, okay? And also there are journals that only publish 1 issue per year. These are things you must look out for when you are selecting a journal. Look at their publication frequency. You don't want to submit your paper to a journal that only publishes once a year. Then it means that you have to wait an entire year. If it is not published this year, you wait for another full year, okay? So what are the characteristics for high quality scientific writing? One is accuracy. So you must make sure that all statements are correct, supported by data and appropriate references. So you must provide accurate information in your data, in your paper when you're writing. There's clarity. So ideas should be expressed in a way that readers can easily understand. And sometimes this comes with precision and brevity. They always walk together. Okay, so there's clarity, then precision. Use specific terms and quantitative information without unnecessary detail. Okay, so you don't want to waste my time reading all other literature and you just want to describe some data, what was significant and what was not, and then you write, however, to begin with, in the first place, I will say, you are taking too many, you are going too far. Okay, then brevity is communicate more with less. Okay, so eliminate redundancy and fill a word. So when that's what we're doing, clarity, precision, and brevity, they work together. Okay, so try as much as you can to write in a way that is easy to understand. And always what I tell people, if you read sentences and find they're too long, most scientists think their brains work so fast that you find a scientist has written a sentence and that sentence is 4 lines long. Then you read through and then because there are 4 lines, you get confused in the middle because the line is too long. The information that is being passed. Then when you read through together with this student, for example, you sit them down and help them read their sentences, and then you ask them how many pieces of information are in that 4-line long sentence. Then they tell you, this one is talking about growth, and this one is also talking about, I've also put about feeding in it. Okay, so is it possible that you can break this into 3 sentences that are talking about, so each information is given in its own sentence? Then they realize, okay, so I can break this and put a full stop here and use however or use in addition. I don't know, those are conjunctions. I don't know. The English people know it. So the whole thing is about trying to write in a way that is clear. And the easiest way to enhance clarity is writing in shorter sentences. So you'd have very basic sentences and also some compound sentences that could combine ideas, but without making it overly too long that I lose track of what I was reading in the middle. Okay, then good scientific writing should also have logical flow. So you organize ideas in a coherent order that guides the reader smoothly. One of the things that this talks about is when you're writing your manuscript, just the same way when you're writing your proposals, I want to see that when, let's say, when you go to the methodology part, the results and the discussion, I want to see that when I'm reading your method 1, it gives me result 1 and discussion 1. Okay, so that it's very easy logically for me to follow. I don't want to go into your materials and methods, the results, and the discussion section, and then I realized that there's a method you did as method number 4, you described it as method number 4, but then the result I'm seeing, the first result came out of method number 7. So I'm like, this is just difficult to understand. Okay, so make sure that there's that logical flow. Then there's objectivity. So present facts without bias. Let the data speak for itself. Okay, do not force that this is how this data has to speak. Let it speak for itself. So if there was no significant difference, just say there was no significant difference. Okay, don't start saying there was no significant difference. However, we think, what is the data saying? It's that simple. Okay. Then you must also maintain scientific integrity. So honest reporting, proper citation, and transparency in all aspects of research, including the use of AI. Okay, I think this is one thing that I have to introduce at this level, where there's a, I think, I don't know, some of you attended the webinar that we had at TCC, where we were talking about AI without misconduct, where we say that but I've seen most journals these days are telling scholars, if you used AI, just declare to which specific AI tool you used and to what extent or what did you use it for. Universities, some of them, and especially the ones abroad, are already accepting that scholars can use AI, but then they have to declare. So that if you declare that you used AI to do a specific thing, maybe conceptualization or correcting grammar and stuff, and then they detect that you used it, the argument is now to what extent. But the argument will now shift. The argument will shift from whether you used it or not to now asking me to what extent did you use it. It's like when you are telling me, when I tell you that I didn't take any of your money, and then you realized I took 3,000 shillings. Then you would say, why did you not even tell me that you took my money? But if I told you that I passed by your place, I found some money on the table and I took 1,000. And then you realize that, no, it's not, you took 2,000. Now the argument is about how much I took. It's not about whether I took your money or not. So you'll tell me, fine, you told me you took my money. But you told me that you only took 1,000. But then I realized you lied, you took 2,000. So we are talking about how much I took, not whether I took it or not. So the argument with the AI sometimes shifts to that. If you say that, yes, I used AI for some conceptualization and also drawing of these conceptual frameworks. So if the journal detects and says, yeah, but we are seeing AI use in your manuscript, then now the question is, yeah, I said I used AI, did I not? Then they will say, you said, but you lied to what extent? Yeah, I think let's talk about what extent, but not whether I used it or not. So that goes into scientific integrity, okay? Then reproducibility is one big challenge in research these days. And one of the places that I look at so much when I'm reviewing a paper is the methodology. Can somebody with the same kind of setup, with the same kind of resources, with the same kind of knowledge, repeat your work just based on your paper without calling to ask you, how much of this did you do? How many people did you interview? How did you even reach out to them? What was the composition of your, no. So provide enough details so that others can replicate your work and verify your results, okay? So let's say the example here is good writing. So we are looking at the good versus poor writing. So the good writing example is water quality improved significantly. The p-value was less than 0.05 after the introduction of the biofilter. But then if you write it that the water quality was better after the use of the biofilter, if this is scientific paper, then you will be asked a lot of questions. But you see the one up there, the one on the left has information, okay? Night tilapia growth increased by 18.6% compared to control. And then you refer us to a table. Now, the other side, you are saying the fish grew more in the treatment than in the control. You see, so these are just examples of how that can you give enough detail that people don't ask you. 3 duplicate tanks were used for each treatment. So N is equals to 3. We did the experiment in a few times. We did the experiment a few times. So these are just several examples where previous studies, Omondi et al., Liet et al. Reported similar findings. And then instead of writing that, we are saying many authors have said the same thing in their studies. These are not just examples. These are things I see students or scholars writing when they are writing their papers. Sometimes they say several studies have reported the same. Which several studies? You need to give me examples, okay? So if that is not clear, okay? Then if you're writing, the results suggest that biofilters can enhance water quality and fish productivity. The biofilter is good, and it can be used by farmers because it works well. So you see, it's a bit of, so those are just examples of how then you can write with clarity in a way that I don't ask a lot of questions, okay? Remember, good scientific writing is accurate, clear, precise, concise, and ethical, with a logical flow that enables reproducibility. Just a summary of everything that we talked about, okay? So when I share these notes, you can always go back, and anytime you are writing, ask yourself whether it meets those criteria. But before you write your manuscript, you need to think about these things, okay? Good planning leads to strong, focused, and publishable papers. Number 1, what is the central message? You are going to tell a story. What story am I telling? You need to think about the story within your manuscript, okay? You have a manuscript that, let's say you are extracting a manuscript out of your thesis, as an example. But then you combined 2 objectives because you realize maybe one objective does not have enough data to stand alone as a manuscript. So you say, okay, I'm going to combine these 2 closely related objectives and do one paper out of them. Then I'll combine the other 2 objectives. But then you must decide, once I combine these 2 objectives, what story do I want to tell? Or what story do these 2 objectives tell? Okay? Identify the main finding or takeaway of your paper. What is it that it must explain? The second thing, what gap does the study address? Because in your background, you must tell us what is known and what is not known, and the reason why that study was carried out. Okay? Now, what is the audience? These are things you need to ask yourself. Understand your target readers to shape your tone, depth, and terminology. Let's say you have done research and you are trying to produce 2 different kinds of publications. There's one you are doing for policy makers. So you are trying to say, I'm getting a policy brief out of my research items, or I'm getting a technical white paper, or I'm getting a scientific paper for publication. So decide, because then depth and terminology and tone depends on the audience you are targeting, okay? Now, which journal is most appropriate? Match your study scope, audience, and impact with the right journal. We will look at how do we select the right journal for our manuscript once it is ready. Okay? What is novel about your study? Articulate the originality and the significance of your work clearly. So these are things you must think about, okay? Now, key questions to ask yourself is, am I answering an important scientific question? Is my study well designed and ethical? Do my results provide new insight? What impact can this research create? And am I ready to communicate it effectively? Okay? So plan well, write better, publish with impact. Now, this is about now choosing the right journal for your paper. What happens is, in the process of writing, you must already start thinking. And what I always tell people is, when people ask me sometimes, how do I choose the right journal for my paper? I always say, when you're writing your paper, there are papers that you are citing. Like when you're writing your proposal or even thesis, you cited certain papers. And these papers, you cited them because they are close or they are related to what you are writing about. So meaning that these papers, the journals that published these papers that you are citing, why can't they be able to publish your paper? So that is the first place to start, okay? So you think of, I cited certain papers that were published in certain journals. The fact that I found them useful for my study means that they are close to what I'm studying. So can I consider those journals that published them? That is the first place to start. Then the key criteria to consider when selecting the right journal is the scope. Does the journal publish work in your field and topic? Okay? You don't want to submit your paper to a journal that only publishes about aquaculture management, and you are talking about something that is completely unrelated, they will throw back that paper to you. Okay. Then the audience who reads the journal, most of the time these days, research is multidisciplinary. So that's why we were saying that when you're writing the title of your paper, you avoid too much jargon, because jargon are field specific. So let's say if I'm writing a paper on Nile perch and I use the word Lates niloticus in my title, someone in the field of management who wants to know something about Nile perch in Lake Victoria could be looking for papers on Nile perch. But then they don't know that Lates niloticus is Nile perch because they are not from my field. So that jargon throws them off. Okay. So when I'm writing Lates niloticus, I must write Nile perch in brackets so that anybody who is outside my field will know that Lates niloticus is Nile perch. Okay. The impact was the general influence and reputation. We are talking about the index, how do we call them? Impact factor. Impact factor plays a role, but that's also a debate that I don't want to draw myself into, because I know so many scholars here will start talking about how know those things. So I'm not just going there. Acceptance rate, you don't want to submit your paper to a journal with an acceptance rate of 2% or 10% or 30%. Okay. Review time, how long does the peer review take? Article processing charges. You also think about publication fees. These days, if you want to publish open access, some journals and most journals will ask you to pay some money. Ask yourself, I want to submit my report to this journal. Will I be able to pay? How much are they charging? Will I be able to? Then you want to consider whether you are publishing it open access or it has to be hidden behind a paywall or it has to be subscription based. Must decide, I'm publishing a paper. Do I want to publish it open access? If I'm going to publish it open access, how much does that cost me? Or do I want to just subscribe, publish and allow people to subscribe? You know, are these the things and also indexing. Is the journal indexed in major databases like Scopus, for example, Web of Science, PubMed, and all these things. So if they're not indexed anywhere, then you're going to have a problem. Okay. So there's something I want to show you here. I'll just stop sharing this and show you something before we take a short break in the next 4 minutes. So when choosing the right, when you want to choose a journal for your paper, this is what most of the time is done. I'm just going to share my screen here so that I show you something. So these days, there are what we call journal finders. So you can use a journal finder to match your journal. So what you do is you just go to a publisher that you like. So just write journal. So when you write journal finders on Google, then you are going to find most of these journals have journal finders. So they will help you just match your paper to, you see. So if you want to publish in Elsevier, you will have the Elsevier journal finder here. If you want to publish in Springer NatureLink, that is, if you want to publish with Wiley and depending on your field, if you want to publish with the MDPI, Taylor and Francis, all this. So let's say we want to publish with the Elsevier. I'm just going to look for something here so that I can use as an example. Manuscripts. Okay. I'm just looking for a manuscript because I want to use it as an example so that we can see what how that looks like. So let's say we are this is the paper that we are publishing. Okay, so if you go back to the journal finder, I don't know which screen you are seeing. I've opened that document. I don't know which screen is visible. Just tell me, which screen are you seeing? The journal finder one or the Word document?
The journal finder one.
Okay, thank you. So if we are on the journal finder, what you do, you choose the journal, the publisher you want to publish with. So let's say we want to publish with Elsevier here. Just click on journal finder here, and then Elsevier and any other publisher will open for you this window where you just come and paste your abstract. So we'll come and pick our abstract from here. We'll copy our abstract, come and paste it here. And then with that, you just click find journals. It's going to find journals for you based on your abstract. So we have 40 journals that match our paper. There's the marine policy. This one does not have any, if you want to publish it. So these are the things we were saying you look at. Okay. So impact factor is 3.7, the site score is 8.1. Submission to first decision is 5 days, then acceptance to publication is 8 days. And then you look at how many, if you want to publish open access, you have to pay $4,000. If you want to publish it to be hidden behind a paywall, then there are no charges. Societal, environmental science and policy is another paper that has, so these are the things. So if you find one that is interesting, then you just click on visit journal page or submit paper, then you can be able to submit your paper to this. We have published here actually before. I have published a paper here. So that is one way of finding a journal for your paper. And if all this, so let's say even this one, if you want to publish with Springer Nature, you just come and click there. Then they allow you to paste your abstract here. Once you paste your abstract there, then you find journals. It's going to find journals for you within the database. But why is it not working now? Yeah, so I don't know. My way is not loading, but ideally it should just the same way. It should just be able to. It should just be able to give me find journals for me. Let me see if no. It should be able to give me journals. Yeah, so basically that is how you find journals. And also the other thing is also looking at, let's say even this one. The other way is also looking at the papers that, the journals that published the paper you are trying to, you cited, the papers you cited. So here we can put that, and then we can also put the title of our paper here. Then with that, we can easily just search. So we have all these journals that are linked, and then the article processing charges are also here. So it's up to you to see which one suits you. The impact factor, the site score, the year it was launched, all these things. So you can easily click on any that is interesting and then you submit. So I will stop it here. Then we have some 10 minutes break, and then we come back to the actual writing now of the different sections of the paper. Some tips on how to write the title, some tips of how to write the background and all that. So we'll have a little break, and then we come back at, just come back at 11 so that we can get into the actual writing. If anybody has a question before we go for the break, they can type in the chat or they can ask, and then we can have a discussion before we get in the actual writing. Someone is asking, what is the minimum impact factor accepted by universities? Most universities, I think, do not even have the minimum impact factor. The impact factor has generated a lot of debates in the publishing industry, because journals these days sometimes even lie about it. So it's just about is the journal predatory or not. I'll talk about predatory journals, because most universities will say, as long as the journal is not predatory, we don't care about the impact factor. But as long as the journal is not a predatory journal, we will still accept it. So we'll talk about predatory journals when we come back.
So much, Dr. Nicolai. Just to also say, on the chat, I have shared an attendance list. So kindly make sure that you fill the attendance list for you to be able to get your certificate.
from their chairs and got something to drink. I hope it's water or coffee or something else. But we are back here now to start the actual writing. This will not take too long, so I hope I also don't want to keep you sitting for way too long. We already had talked about how to select our journal where we want to publish our paper. I want to go into, I hope this is I'm just sharing something here. Good. So once we have selected our journal, I want to go straight into the other thing before we get into the writing, because we must understand journal instructions. And where do we get it? You follow the author guidelines. So when you go to a journal, when you open the journal's website, you will find instruction to authors or author guidelines. That is what is going to tell you how to format the word limits for the abstract, for example, or the page limits or figure requirements. How do you need to put your figures? Some of them will tell you that you submit figures and tables as separate files. Some of them will tell you that we embed them within the manuscript where you want them to appear. How do you caption them? All those things are always in the author's instruction. Now, what happens is you can have a very good paper, a well-written paper, but if it is not formatted according to the journal's instructions, it will just be kicked out. You'll be told whatever you've written is good, but does not meet the journal requirements. So it's very good to understand the journal requirements, okay? Reference style, whether it is Harvard, APA, Vancouver, these days people have reference managers. So maybe you can write for me the reference management tool that you are using. Or are you still doing your references manually? If it is manual, just say manual so that we see if there is a way we can help you. Data availability, reporting guidelines, ethics and compliance, you will find all this. So follow the guidelines. Then in that case, then the journal will feel like you already have respect for the journal. So most of the time you go to the journal website, then there's the author guidelines, and then there's the instruction for authors, and then you can download templates. There are journals that already even have templates. So you are told, download our template and fit your manuscript into this template. Make sure you follow through that if that is what they want, so that you don't go off the format and your paper gets thrown out, not because of the content, but just because of formatting. So make sure you understand the journal instructions, okay? Why does it matter? It enhances the chances of desk acceptance. You remember when I was talking about desk rejections, where an editor rejects your paper without, taking it through the review process, because I will just scan through. If it does not meet our formatting criteria, I'll just throw it back and say, that was not formatted the right way. Okay, it shows professionalism and attention to detail, speeds up your peer review and publication, and avoids unnecessary revisions or rejections, okay? Now, the common mistakes that people make, especially when they don't read the instructions for authors, is ignoring word limits and formatting rules, wrong referencing style or inconsistent citations, poor quality figures or missing captions. So you find people have, because journals will tell you the quality of the figures they want, missing data availability of ethical statements, or not using required reporting guidelines. So you must make sure that all that is adhered to. So the next time you want to submit your paper, make sure you read the instructions for authors so that you see, how do I format? What is the font size, font style? How do I write the titles? Do I need to indent my paragraphs? All those things are always written there. Then let's talk about the structure here. So what is the structure of a scientific paper? Most of the time we have the INRAD structure, okay, where we have the instruction, the introduction, the materials and methods, then the results, then the discussions, and so many other things. Now, when we start with the introduction, we'll talk about each of them at a time. So the introduction introduces the topic, explains the background, identifies the problem, and states the objectives or hypothesis. So in the introduction is where you are giving us the background. How did we get to where we are? What is this problem? To what extent what is the extent of the effect? What do we know about it? What still remains unknown? And why was this research conducted? The method describes the material, study area, experimental design, data collection, analysis, and ethical consideration in enough detail to allow reproducibility. I think I talked about this. In the method section, we must know that, because when I'm reading your results, I want to be sure that the results you are reporting could have been achieved using the methods you told me. If I'm reading method results and I keep doubting, how did this person get this piece of data? How did they get this table or the data they are presenting in this table? Because there's no method in their methodology section that was supposed to collect this kind of data. How did they get this data? Then I will start thinking that you went into some kitchen and cooked some data. And then the results, present the findings objectively using text, tables, and figures without interpretation. Now, if the journal tells you that the results section and discussion section are two separate sections, then make sure that in the results section, you just present the results without interpreting them. Then you go to the discussion section where you now interpret those results. But if you are told that you write the results and discussions at once as one section, then you will write a result, interpret it, compare with what other people have done, write another result, interpret it, compare with what other people have done. But if there are two separate sections, just write the results section separately and the discussion section separately. The other additional components, of course, are the title, which has to be clear, informative, and concise. It captures the essence of your study. Then the abstract, which is a brief summary of the background, methods, key results, and conclusions. So basically, the abstract should be able to stand alone. It gives us an idea of what you did, why you did it, how you did it, and the main results, okay? Then keywords at the end of the abstract. So these are the main topics of your paper for indexing and discovery. Then the references. Then we also have acknowledgements and any supplementary material. So sometimes you find that some journals will tell you that we want you to submit figures and tables as separate files. So those are supplementary files. Or sometimes they want you to give us data sets, for example, or specific R codes that resulted out of your analysis, or they want you to attach questionnaires so that they are sure that there is a tool that you used, and they want to look at the tool to be sure that actually the data you are reporting came from that tool. Okay, so it depends. So basically, we always start with the title, then we go to the abstract, then keywords, then we go into the introduction, materials and methods, results, discussion, and then now, most of the time, we go into the conclusion and recommendations, and then the acknowledgements, and then if there are any other materials that are there. Now, how do we write an effective title? Your title is the first and sometimes only thing that readers see, so make it count, okay? It is read by the biggest or the largest number of readers, okay? There are those who will read it and then go ahead to download your actual paper. There are those who will just read it in the indexing databases, and they might not even read the entire paper. So make sure that it is specific, informative, searchable, concise, and accurate, okay? So it is specific that it clearly reflects the main focus of your study. Informative, provides enough information about the key variables, population, and context, okay? I don't want you to promise whatever more than what is in the paper. So if you did not do any gene editing, you just did sequencing, then just talk about gene sequencing if that is what you did in your title. You don't promise more than what is in the paper. Searchable, include important keywords for indexing and discoverability, then concise, as short as possible, without losing meaning. So ideally between 10 to 20 words. And most of the time, if you realize you are going beyond 20 words in your title, in the title of your paper, read it again and ask yourself, am I over-explaining my title because I don't know how to summarize what I have done? So keep it below 20 words if you can. Accurate, truthfully represent the content and finding of your study. So as I said, do not say what is not in that paper, because then as a reviewer, for example, if I read the title and then I go and realize that you promised something in the title that you did not deliver in the actual paper, then I'll start having problems with you. Okay, so I will have a bias when reviewing. I will not review it favorably. I will be like, this guy is talking about sequencing. I've not seen anything here. So it means that they were trying to lie to people. Okay, so an example of poor title is studies on fish, or studies on something. Why is it poor? Because it is too vague, not informative, and lacks key details. A better title could be effects of carbonized pot technology on water quality and line tilapia production in smallholder aquaculture systems in Kenya. Why is it better? It is specific, informative, includes key variables, population, context, and location, and uses searchable. So here, if somebody asks, what effects are we looking at then? We are looking at the commonized pond technology on what variables? Water quality and Nile tilapia production in small holder aquaculture systems in Kenya. It's very specific. You don't have to ask a lot of questions. Now, the tip is place the most important information first. Okay, so if you want us to focus on water quality, or if you want us, like in this case, we want to talk about carbonized pond technology. That is what is important to us at the beginning. So bring it towards the end. Avoid abbreviations, jargon, and unnecessary punctuation. In the title, again, as I said, if you put a lot of jargon and research is now becoming multidisciplinary, then you might end up throwing other people off, maybe from other fields. So someone in the field of, let's say in the field of nutrition and wants to know the nutritional components of Nile tilapia, if they are looking for that on the internet, and I published a paper on the nutritional components of Nile tilapia, but in the title, instead of saying Nile tilapia, I said Oreochromis niloticus, then they don't know what I'm talking about. So the information is there in that paper, but then they don't know that that is the paper they're looking for. Okay, so that jargon becomes a bit of a challenge. So if you are going to write, to use jargon in your title, make sure you write the common name in brackets or the common word in brackets so that people know that, okay, so this is what it means, okay? Include the study population, key variables, and location if relevant. Check titles of recent articles in your target journal for style, so you can easily also just check how are people phrased their titles, okay? So revise your title after completing your manuscript. This is the reason. You know, the title should summarize everything that is in the paper. So sometimes as you begin with what we call a working title, just something to work with to guide you as you do the writing. But finally, when you complete your writing, you want to read through the title again and ask yourself, does it really describe what I have written so far? If it does not, then you need to think of how then you can revise it, okay? So a good title attracts readers, improves discoverability, and increases the impact of your research, okay? So that is the title. Then we go to the abstract. Now we said that an abstract should be able to stand alone. So my mentor told me that, he was telling me that if your abstract falls out of your paper, then people should be able to know what you did, how you did it, why you did it, and the key results. So it is what you did, how you did it, why you did it, and so what, okay? So what you need to include in the abstract is the background. So briefly introduce the problem or knowledge gap your study addresses. So you could start by saying that, like now I'm reading it side by side. So the background here is intensive aquaculture faces challenges of low productivity and poor water quality. So that is the background upon which my research was done, okay? Then the next thing is the objective. State the main aim or objective of your study. In this case, in our abstract in the middle, there are 3 panels. The one in the middle now, after the background, we are coming with the objective. Now we are saying this study evaluated the effects of carbonized pond technology on water quality and Nile tilapia production. Then the other aspect you need to include is a bit of methods, okay? Summarize the study design, location, data collection, and all these things. In our abstract, we are saying a 90-day experiment was conducted in carbonized and traditional ponds in Kisumu County, Kenya. Water quality parameters were measured weekly and fish growth was monitored. Then the main result, carbonized ponds significantly improved water quality and increased fish weight gain by 32% compared to traditional ponds. And then we put the key value, the p-value. Then the conclusion, carbonized pond technology enhances water quality and tilapia productivity, offering a sustainable solution for smallholder aquaculture. So you see, if you read that entire one, then you realize every aspect is taken care of. Now, there are 2 things about abstracts. There is what we call structured abstract, and there's what we call unstructured abstract. A structured abstract is what looks like the one in the middle, okay? So sometimes you find journals, or sometimes you find conferences calling for abstracts, and then they tell you that they want structured abstracts. If a journal asks for structured abstract, they want you to write it in the format that is written here, so that you put a background, put full column, then write a small background. Objective, small objective, like that, like that. But if it is unstructured, it means that they want you to write this as a block of text, but still include all this information without structuring it. I hope you understand what I mean. So in this case, then we would write the same abstract, but without putting the structures. So that is what we call unstructured abstract. The example I'm giving you here is structured abstract, okay? So the tips for writing a great abstract, I think I've talked about this already. Write in one clear paragraph, use past tense or what you did, present tense for what the findings show, okay? So this is what was done, this is what was done, but then you can use present to say the current study shows that, or the results of the current study shows. So you are able now to talk about the current study. Avoid citations, abbreviations, and jargon. Okay. In the abstract, I don't want to see Outa et al. 2015 in the abstract. Okay. Be concise. Follow the word limit. And some journals will tell you the abstract, the length of the abstract is a maximum of 250 words or 300 words or 150 words. So follow that. Okay. Highlight the importance and impact of your study and proofread carefully for clarity, grammar, and accuracy. Okay. A strong abstract grabs attention, summarizes your work, and drives readers to read more. Think of your abstract as your paper's first impression. So make it count. I want, when I read the abstract, it entices me to read the entire paper. Okay. So every time I will share these notes, of course. So when you're writing abstract, always try to see, does it have a short background? Does it state the objectives? Does this tell us the methods that were used? Does this give us the main results? And if you have more results, just do a summary of them here. Does it get a good conclusion? Okay, so we have keywords. When talking about keywords, some people ask me, Nicholas, how do I select keywords? And my answer is always very simple. If you are looking for information like the one contained in the manuscript you are trying to submit, what keywords would you type in those search engines? Then they start giving you words, and then you tell them, yeah, that's how you select them. So what do you include in your keywords? It has to be relevant to your study. So choose words that describe what you studied. So if you studied aquaculture systems, if you studied fish growth parameters, those are the things. Specific and not general. So use specific terms rather than broad words. Commonly used. Select terms that researchers in your field use. Okay. Avoid unnecessary words. Do not include words that are too general or too unrelated. Check guidelines. Use 4 to 6 keywords, and most journals will tell you to use 4 or 6 keywords. Okay. So you can use words from your title and abstract, but I always tell people that you borrow very cautiously from your title, because the words in your title will automatically already appear in the indexing databases. So it's a waste of those words. If you have the chance to use another keyword, then choose other keywords, but don't dwell so much on the words that are already in the title. Okay. Include the key methods, species, and materials and outcomes. Sometimes you can say, okay, Orychromis niloticus or Nile tilapia, you can use them as keywords, because then people searching through the databases, those can enhance the chances of your paper coming up. Okay. Use controlled vocabulary or terms from subject whatever. Place words in order of importance from most to least important. So like in our example of carbonized pond technology, the strong keywords could be carbonized ponds, water quality, Nile tilapia, aquaculture, dissolved oxygen, because these are some of the parameters that you are checking when you are measuring. Weak keywords could be fish, water, ponds, quality, growth. Those are, so, you will read the exact example. So if the example here is effects of carbonized pond technology on water quality and tilapia production, then the keywords could be carbonized ponds, which is the main intervention or technology used, water quality, that is the core outcome measured in the study, Nile tilapia, which is Orychromis niloticus, is the species studied, aquaculture is a broader field of the context, then dissolved oxygen is the key parameter measured, ammonia is also important water quality parameter. So good keywords increase the visibility and impact of your research. Okay, so think through them very well. Then we get to the introduction. I want to ask you an example. For example, in our social context, if you have been dating someone for long and then you take them for introduction, I want a man and a lady to tell me, what information do you give this people when you are introducing this person to them. So for a lady, and what questions do you think they will ask? So let's start with a lady. When you are introducing someone to your people, what information do you give them about this person? And what questions do you think they can ask you? I want to start with a lady. As we say, this is just our opinion. Anybody? If you are going to introduce someone to your people, what information do you give them and what questions do you think they can ask? Any lady to start or any man, no problem. Anybody can start.
I will be introducing him by giving his name, his where he's coming from, where he's from, what he does for a living, and would expect questions like, do you love him? Do you think you want to have him as a husband? And the likes. Thank you.
Aha. Thank you. So, because you are the one who knows this person. So, this is the same example we are saying. You are introducing to us a paper you are writing. We don't know anything about anything you are writing. You are the one who did this study. You are the one who know why you did it. All these things. So when you are doing an introduction, you must give us all, where did you meet this person? Like, how did you come up with this problem? Okay. So the introduction must include the background information, introduce the topic and provide necessary background and context. We want to know, how did we even come to be? How did this problem come to be in the first place? Then the problem statement, we want you to tell us the problem, okay? Identify the gap in the knowledge or specific problem your study addresses. Then the research justification, explain why the problem is important and why your study is needed. Then objectives or hypotheses, state the aim, objectives or hypothesis of your study clearly and outline the study, outline of the study. So briefly describe the structure and approach of your study. So the example of our paper that we are talking about is, let's say we are giving just a short background. Of course, this has been summarized so much just for the context of the training. So we could start with aquaculture is a rapidly growing sector that plays a vital role in food security and livelihoods in Kenya. Then you can go ahead and give statistics, for example, and tell us it contributes to this amount of fish production in Kenya, and give citations, or globally, all these things, that give citation. And then we are now introducing the problem. You say, however, you see now you've given us a background, a very nice background. However, intensive aquaculture often leads to declining water quality and reduced fish yield. Okay, there's limited information on the effectiveness of carbonized pond technology in improving water quality and fish production in smallholder systems. Therefore, this study aimed to evaluate the effects of carbonized pond technology on water quality and night production in smallholder ponds in Kisumu, Kenya. The specific objectives were, then you narrate to us the specific objective. Then the study was conducted for over 90 days using a controlled experimental design. With that, I have everything I need. I have enough background or enough introduction to understand your problem. And for a good paper, you go to 1 page or 3/4 of a page, I already have a nice background. These days, journals will tell you if you do more than a page, they will start telling you this is too much background. You need to summarize it, be very precise. So with what we have, it could be general, it could have been really summarized, but it carries everything that will require in your background. So when I share these notes, you will look at it anytime you're writing a background, you will ask yourself, did it introduce a very nice background? Is my problem stated very well? Did I justify the problem? Have I talked about the hypothesis or objectives very clearly, or the key questions that were asked during this research were this and that, and what was the outline? So you give us an idea. So a great introduction, you start broadly and then narrow down to your specific topic. So if you talk about aquaculture contributes to this globally in Kenya, aquaculture contributes to food security by producing this, all that, and then you say in Kisumu County, for example, you see now you have narrowed down very fast to the specific area where you are doing a research, okay? Use recent and relevant literature to support your points. Clearly highlight the gap your study addresses, state your objectives or hypotheses clearly at the end, and keep it concise. Usually 1 to 2 pages, depending on the general requirements. But 2 pages sometimes is too much. I always tell people, try to do an introduction in 1 page. If you go so much, could be 1.5. But if you go beyond 1.5 and you're going to 2 pages, my friends, I think that can be too much. Okay, so we know that a strong introduction builds interest, justifies your study, and guides your reader. I always want you to think of it as introducing someone you have known for a long time to a point where you want to marry them. You are introducing them to your people. If you do a very good introduction, these people will be interested in knowing more about this person. But if you do a very weak introduction, like you're not even sure of them, then they will also start asking themselves, if you are the one who is not enthusiastic about introducing this person to us, why should I even care? Okay, so these are the things. So after the introduction, we always go to the method section. So materials and methods. This is where you are describing what you did. Okay, the method section tells the readers how you did your study. It should be clear, detailed, and reproducible. Okay, the study area and site description. So describe the location, climate, and relevant characteristics of the study area, and also a justification of why you chose that study area, for example. So let me say you are doing a research in Lake Victoria, or you are doing some research in Busia County. You need to tell us what Busia County looks like, the setting of the villages where you are doing your research, if people mostly are smallholder farmers. If that is relevant to the context of your research, make sure you give us that detail, okay? Then experimental design or setup. So explain the design, treatments, controls, replicates, duration of the study. So this one has to be very clear that there was the experimental design was split plot, or it was completely randomized design. It was a cross-sectional study that took how many years, all those things. So list the materials and methods and equipment that you used. List the materials, equipment, and the specifications used in the study. So if you used certain chemicals, for example, or if there are specific materials that you used in your data collection, make sure they are clearly stated. Data collection procedures. Describe how data were collected, by whom, how often, and under what conditions. Depending on the kind of study, and that's why I'm saying for this training, it will be difficult to tell you if you are an economist, this is how you collect your data. If you are an aquatic scientist, this is how you collect your data. But generally, that is, you need to give us enough details of how the data was collected. If there were interviews, how many interviews were done? Where were they done? Were they done physically or did you call people online, or did you send out Google Forms? If there were key informant interviews, which key informants were interviewed? How many of them were? What were the criteria for choosing them? Okay. Then measurement of variables. Define the variables and how each of them was measured. The units, the tools, all those things. That analysis also describes the statistical tests and models and the software and all these things. Then ethical considerations. So the example here is the study area. The study was conducted in Kisumu County, Kenya, located on the shores of Lake Victoria. The area has a tropical climate and all this, if that is important for aquaculture. Experimental design, a completely randomized design with 3 treatments and 3 replicates were used for 90 days. The materials you state very well. The data collection is stated. The variables measured are stated. How data analysis was done, and then the ethical considerations, if there were any clearances. So all this must go into your methodology, so that if somebody is given the same materials and the same resources, they are able to repeat your work without calling you. Okay. So what are the strong tips for a strong method section? Give enough detail. I think we talked about this. Use standard units and scientific names when applicable. So if it is milligrams per liter, make sure that it's clear that this was milligrams per liter. Somebody will not ask what amount of sulfuric acid did you add, for example. Okay. Describe procedures in the order they were done, so that when you are reporting your results, I will follow that. Procedure 3 gave me result 3 that I'm seeing here. Procedure 1 gave me result 1. Okay. Okay, cite established methods when used. So, for example, if you did water quality analysis using those alpha standards, or you used a specific standard within your field, you don't have to start now again telling us how you took 2 milliliters of sulfuric acid and dissolved it, I don't know, in water and waited for 35 minutes. No, just say water quality analysis was done following this, and then you can cite it so that it's clear. If they want all the details, then they can easily just go back to that protocol and just see. Okay, and ensure consistency between methods and results. Again, as I said, if I'm reading your results section and then I realize that you didn't describe how the specific results you are reporting were obtained, then I will assume you are cooking those results. If I find that you are talking about the growth rate of a specific fish, but then in your methods there's nowhere you are measuring growth, you are measuring length, or there's nowhere you are measuring weight, and you are reporting length and weight results in a table, in a graph, I will just throw that paper away, because I'll ask you, how did you get these results? Yeah, because then you did not describe how you came up with these results. Okay, so can another researcher repeat your work using the information you have provided? So that is about the method section. Then now we are now writing, after the methods, of course, we have the results. Now here, when you're writing your results, you present your data logically. So present your data in a logical order that follows your objectives or hypotheses. And in this case, you must follow your method section. Okay? So if, again, I'm not going to say this more than 1,000,000 times, the results, the methods, the results, and the discussion must follow that logical order, so that I know result method 1 gave me result 1, and this is the discussion 1. Result 2 gave me method 2 gave me result 2, and this is the discussion 2. I can easily just follow them like that. Okay, use tables and figures where appropriate. So summarize some data using tables, graphs, and figures to enhance clarity and understanding. Of course, there is some data that you can present in text, but if there are cases where you feel a table can summarize it better, then you can do that. Then report accurate data. So report all results accurately without interpreting them, just the facts. Interpretation is left for the discussion section. Okay, include statistical output. So provide relevant statistical results, e.g., mean, SD, p-values, confidence intervals, depending on the kind of analysis you did. That is very important. Okay, then highlight key findings. So emphasize important trends, differences, or patterns that relate to your objectives, and avoid repetition. So if you have reported, or if you presented data in a table, don't present data in table and then I see it again presented as a graph, and then I still see it presented in words. Then I'll be asking, why did you present it in all these formats? Just choose one. If you want to present it in words, present it in words. If you want to present it in tables, present it in tables, but don't do both. And there are cases where you say, I think the data I have, I can just present in words, then just narrate. Okay, so this is an example. A total of 550 water quality measurements were taken over 90 days from the carbonized, and then now we have all that. So the parameter, what was there in the carbonized pond, traditional pond, and then the p-value. And then we can also now look at the weekly dissolved oxygen. So depending on what you want to show, you can decide to use a table or a figure. Okay, for tables, the caption becomes on top of the table. So the caption is above the table. For figures, in this case, I think it will just space, but for figures, it has to be below the figure. So for tables, the caption is above the table. For figures, the caption is below the figure. Now, follow the same order as your objectives or the methods. Use descriptive text to guide the reader through your results. I always tell people, if you have a table or a figure, make sure that in your description, you refer to it as figure 1, figure 2, or table 1, table 2, so that when I'm reading your description, I know when to look at the table. Otherwise, if you have a table or a figure and it is not cited anywhere in your writing, I will ask you, why is this table here? Or when should I look at it? Because you are the one writing, you should tell me when to look at it. So if you don't refer to it anywhere, then I will ask, why did you even have it if you did not refer to it in your writing? Okay, refer to every table and figure in your text. Report statistical significance and effect sizes where relevant. Keep text concise. Ensure all data presented are related to your research questions, and use past tense because you are reporting so your results should answer the question, what did you find? Okay, if I cannot answer what did you find, then it becomes a problem. So for results, how are we creating? How do we create figures and tables? I think
is muted.
Daktari, we don't hear you.
Sorry, I got muted in the process. So this one is an example of a figure that has a very clear caption. Okay, so your caption should be self-explanatory. We don't want the reviewer to be asking, what is this figure about? So you see now we have the legends here. So this is dissolved oxygen in milligrams per liter. These are the treatments. So we have the traditional pond, the uncarbonized pond, and the carbonized pond. So in this case, you know very well that it's very easy for anybody just to see how all this relates to your study. And if it's a table, this is a table with good caption. Water quality parameters, we know that whatever we are seeing here are means plus standard deviation at the end of the 90-day experiment. So we know this is day 90. And then you come down here and give us some notes. Values are mean plus standard deviation, n is 3. Values in the same row with different superscripts are significantly different. So this one is very clear so that we see, okay, if we are looking through this, then we see if they have different superscripts, then we know that they are significantly different. So we see this one and this one have the same superscripts, but this one is different from them. So it's very clear for whoever is reading this table to know what is in this table. Okay, so include units, sample size, and statistical notes below the table if that is necessary. Okay, now you need to think like this. Can a reader understand your data just by looking at your figure or table and its captions? Okay. Then how do we report statistical results clearly? I think I talked about this already. Describe your data. So report the size, mean standard deviation, and all the standard error. State the test, which test was used specifically. Report the key results. So include the key results here, degree of freedom, all those. Use the correct terminology, higher, lower, significantly different, all those. You know, sometimes when you write that the results show a difference in concentration between this and that, you need to tell us, is this difference significant or not? There could be a difference, but if it's not significant, then scientifically you cannot convince us that those are two different things. Okay. So like here, what to include when reporting? So we have talked about the descriptive statistics, the statistical test, or the name of the test. So is it ANOVA? Is it t-test? Is this Kruskal-Wallis? Then the test statistics. So when you do ANOVA, for example, then you have the degree of freedom, and when you do t-test, you have. So these ones are also important, especially when you are reporting for all this experimental research where you have done certain analysis. If you did post hoc, the Cohen's D, the effect size where appropriate, all these things you must report for us so that we are clear on what you are writing. After that, then the discussion. So discussion just interprets. So basically, it interprets your findings and compares with previous research. It also explains similarities and differences. Then it discusses implications, and it acknowledges limitations in the event that they occur. Okay. So here, the current study demonstrates that carbonized pond technology significantly improves pond water quality and Nile tilapia production compared to traditional ponds. Dissolved oxygen, all those water quality parameters were likely contributed to the higher fish growth and better feed conversion ratio observed. So you have interpreted the results that you have. Okay, as a scientist, you have interpreted. Then we are now comparing. You see, the findings agree with those by Kumar et al. 2020 and Omondi et al. 2019, who reported all that. Okay. However, the growth rates in this study were significantly lower than those reported by Omondi et al. 2019, possibly due to differences in pond size and stocking density. You see, you have interpreted and also given areas where they agree and where they disagree. Okay, what are the implications of your result? Okay, the results imply that carbonized pond technology is a viable and sustainable option for smallholder aquaculture, especially in regions facing poor water quality. It can enhance, so you have been given the implication, but then you need to also talk about the limitations. So you talk about what is the limitations of your study, because most farmers go beyond 90 days when they are growing their fish. So the results only give us what happens within 90 days. Is it possible that if we grow the fish beyond 90 days in these systems, can we get different results? So it's good to acknowledge some of these limitations and then also recommend future research. And this can either go in the discussion section or sometimes the conclusions and recommendations sections. Okay. So how do we start? Start by reminding the reader of your main findings. Do not repeat the results, just interpret them. Okay. Use evidence from literature to support your discussion and explain the significance and relevance of your findings. Be honest and balanced when discussing the limitations. You remember, sometimes you don't want to purport to have found answers to all the questions. So in cases where there are still gray areas, it's good to recommend such as areas that require further studies. So how do you write a convincing conclusion? Restate your main objectives. Summarize the key findings, state the implication, acknowledge limitations, and suggest future research. So, for example, in the conclusion here, we are saying this study evaluated the effects of carbonized. So we remind people of the main objective of our study. Then we summarize the key findings. The results showed that carbonized pond technology significantly improved water quality and water quality parameters and enhanced fish growth. And then state the implications. These findings demonstrate, okay? Then, however, this study was limited to 90 days, and then future research should evaluate. You see now what you have done. You've given us a very good roadmap by restating. You started by restating the main objective, summarized for us the key findings here. You stated the implications of this research. Then you've given us the limitations so that when we read it with some level of caution, and then we are able to know that moving forward, what should we focus on? Because then sometimes most of the time, and especially when you are going to a point of writing, including future research, then in these cases, you are combining conclusions and recommendations, okay? Now, the citations, after that, of course, citations. So you cite effectively. So any citation that is in text must be listed in your reference list, okay? So if I see Outa et al. In your text and I don't see it in the reference list, I will ask you for it. So make sure, and that is why I keep telling people, are you using how do you say? Which reference manager are you using? Because there are people who are still citing their references manually. I don't know which people. I told you to tell me the reference manager you are using. So you can either use there are EndNote, there's Mendeley, there's Zotero, there's RefWorks, and maybe there are others that are in the market. But I use Mendeley a lot and also Zotero because I think I've gotten to be, I've gotten to use them so much, so I know how to use them. So when you are doing references, again, as I said, anything that you have cited must be featured in your reference list. So give credit, acknowledge the original authors for their ideas and findings, support your claims, demonstrate rigor. So when you are, why it is important to reference is because you are giving credit, you support your claims, demonstrate rigor, just show your work is well researched and academically sound. Then it also helps you avoid plagiarism. So somebody will not say that you copied my idea. You will say, fine, I used your idea to develop mine, and then I cited you. So anybody reading will know that this is not my original idea. It came from you. It also helps readers to find and explore your sources. Now, the best practices is cite every source you use in the text. Use recent and relevant sources, ideally within the last 5 to 10 years, depending on the field. Use a consistent citation style throughout the paper. So if it is APA 7th edition, make sure throughout include all necessary information. So all the rubrics, all the metadata, that's what we, in open science these days, we are telling people include all the metadata. And that's why most journals will insist that you use APA, because APA includes also the DOI in the citation. That is very important metadata for me as a researcher who wants my work to be cited, okay? So that is why you need to go to the instructions for authors in the respective journals where you want to submit your paper, so that you know what citation style you need, okay? Use reference managers like Zotero, Mendeley, EndNote, and the examples are also here, so you can check those examples. So if you're using a reference manager, then these reference managers will format it automatically to that format. So you don't need to worry whether there is a full stop after the first name and a semicolon. Those ones, you can't do all that manually. It's a waste of your time. And then after citing, of course, the reference managers, I think I've talked about all this, so you can check which one you want to work with, okay? I'm not going to repeat that because that is something you can go. Then authorship. How do we determine authorship? And an author is somebody who can take intellectual responsibility for the results being reported. So if you know that you cannot take if you cannot take intellectual responsibility for whatever is being reported, then don't just allow yourself to be an author. Okay, so authorship sometimes depends on the contribution. So you say, okay, like the first author, typically the person who did most of the work and wrote the manuscript. The middle authors, other contributors, the ones who made very significant contribution. And in some cases, you find the last author most of the time is a senior researcher or principal investigator who supervised the work. So you find their names towards the end there. And so the authorship should reflect contributions. So discuss and agree on author order early in the research process. Okay, you don't want to start fighting at the end. I did most of the work. You are not supposed to be here. Your name has appeared, but no, those things, no. So just make sure. And then the corresponding author. Some people think that when you talk about corresponding author, it has to be the first author. Not necessarily. The corresponding author is the one who communicates with the journal. So sometimes it is the person who can see emails and coordinate and tell the other authors that, no, we have received review comments. I think we need to work on them and do this and do that. But when you maybe you say that there's a professor who is going to be a corresponding author, and this professor receives 1 million emails in a day, it's very easy that one of those emails will slip their attention, and then the journal will think that you have refused to work on their comments, and then they will throw your paper away, not knowing that this is the corresponding author that did not communicate. So when you're putting the corresponding author, make sure it is someone who can. Then there are things like ORCID. I think most of you already know what about ORCID is. It's a unique identifier. So make sure that as an author you have registered on ORCID, because then that gives you, a unique identification that you can use when you are submitting papers. And then there's the credit taxonomy. There are journals that these days will, when you are submitting the paper, they will tell us what each person did. Okay, so author number 3, so and so, what did they contribute? So that they are sure that whoever is being included has a contribution, not just people who have been included because there's what we call gift authorship. Okay, so then we talk about research integrity. I think these are things we've talked about. One of them is research integrity is the foundation of credible science. So uphold honesty, accuracy, transparency, and accountability in all your research activities. So integrity touches on plagiarism, which is using someone else's idea, word, or work without proper acknowledgement. Always cite your sources and give credit. Fabrication is making up data or results and recording or reporting them as if they were true. Do not invent data. Falsification is manipulating research materials or equipment, process of changing or omitting data to mislead others. Then there's what we call duplicate publication. Sometimes we call it salami publication, where you publish the same data or result in more than one outlet without proper disclosure. I see they have divided them, but most of the time it looks like the same. So like there's also breaking one study into many small papers to increase publication count. So you report findings comprehensively and responsibly. So make sure that what happens. You find somebody has done some data, some information, and they say, I think I can get 3 papers out of this data. So they make sure they just put the bare minimum for a paper to pass for publication, but then they end up, it's just bare minimum. Okay. Then there's image manipulation that happens sometimes. So you alter images or figures in a way that misrepresents the data. So you need to present images truthfully and clearly. Then AI use. Using AI responsibly and transparently also helps when you are writing. Okay. And it's good also to disclose when you have used AI. Okay. Be ethical and credible. I think those are things we've talked about as well. Then predatory journals. We talked about. I think at one point I talked about predatory journals at one point, and one of those things is what do we need to look out for, so that just 1 minute I pick something here. Hello. Hello. Namba landlord ondike gate oko kanyo, ani training. So what do we look out for? Okay. So if somebody says, I think I'm dealing with a predatory journal, how do we know that you are dealing with a predatory journal? One of the characteristics is promise of rapid publication. So they will tell you that if you submit your paper, we are going to publish it in 2 days or 3 days. Then you start asking yourself, okay, I see that you want to, this is not a good journal, okay? They focus on article processing charges, not quality. So they will tell you that our article processing charges are very low. Just send, So you send your paper today, and then in the evening you are told your paper has been accepted. Just send us money. I know some of you have had these experiences. Then spam emails inviting submissions frequently. So you find a lot of emails in your spam folder asking you to submit journals, papers to their journals and stuff like this. Then there's fake editorial boards with unknown irrelevant members or irrelevant members. So you find, if you go to their website, you find there are so many people. If you Google them, you find they either don't exist or there are people who are not even in that field completely. Then there's poor website quality with broken links and vague policies. The red flags, they guarantee acceptance or fast publication, lack of transparent peer review process. If you ask them, do you do peer review? Then they tell you, yeah, we do it. Then you ask them how, just take me through what your peer review process looks like. Then they don't have any, okay? Unclear or fake impact factor claims. So they tell you they have an impact factor of 3 or 17. Then you ask, these are just things they are creating. Then they are not indexed in reputable databases. In your field, you know the databases. So if they're not indexed in PubMed, for example, Web of Science, Scopus, or any other credible database, DOAJ. There is also African Journals Online, which is EJOL. If it's an African journal, ask them, are you indexed in EJOL? If not, then you already start having issues with them, okay? Then the credentials, so we have the directory of open access journals, we have Scopus, Web of Science, and so many others. Then there's this journal, this site that you can go and check. It's called Think, Check, Submit. When you go to Think, Check, Submit, they will ask you certain questions. If you've selected a specific journal and you are considering it to submit your journal to it, your paper to it, then what they do is they will ask you certain questions about that paper, and if the answer to those questions is yes or no, or then you realize if you answer no to a specific number of questions, then you realize, okay, I'm now dealing with a predatory journal. So the other places where you can get examples is we have the Bell's list journal. So if you go to that list, you key in the name of that journal, and if it pops up, there are very high chances it's a predatory journal. They are always put there. Then we have fake impact factor journals. Then we have the hijacked journals and cloned journal websites. So you find that there's a journal that you know within your field. Let's say Journal of Aquatic Sciences. But then some people have cloned that one, and they are either now calling it International Journal of Aquatic Sciences or something. You just realize this one has been cloned, and so you know that we are dealing with a predatory journal. So remember, a good journal safeguards your research. A predatory journal puts it at risk, okay? So if it is too good to be true that you want to publish a paper, they are telling you they can publish it in less than a week, no, you are dealing with things you don't want, okay? So how do you prepare for submission now that you've written your paper? The checklist is confirm the manuscript meets the journal scope, ensure all sections are completed and in order, check all the files are included, verify ethical approvals and declarations, formatting, follow the journal's author guidelines exactly, use correct headings, fonts, spacing and margins, and number pages and lines is required, check on references. If they need a cover letter, write a very good cover letter. If they want a graphical abstract, some journals will ask you for graphical abstracts, and these days it's not difficult because then there is maybe some AI tools that you can use to generate a very nice graphical abstract, as long as you declare to them in your declaration section that this specific AI tool was used in generating the graphical abstract. Then highlights, provide 3 bullets, summarize the key findings of your impact. So sometimes some journals will even ask you for that. If there are any supplementary files that are required, make sure which ones are they. Do they want me to provide the codes? Do they want you to provide the tools that I used, any ethical clearance tools that I used? And then the other things will just be okay. Then the peer review process. The peer review process. Peer review ensures quality, credibility, and integrity of published research through expert evaluation. So these are people within your field who understand your research or the research within your field. So they will ask questions and recommend corrections and maybe, certain things. That is why they are your peers, okay? So we have what we call single blind, double blind, and open review. So single blind is where the reviewers know the identity of the author, but the authors do not know the identity of the reviewer. So you are told that we are giving you a paper, then you realize you see the names of the authors, but the authors do not know that you are the one who is reviewing their work. Then there's double blind, which is mostly, this is the most common one these days. So neither the author nor the reviewers know each other's identity. Okay. So this one ensures impartiality and reduces bias. So you just get a paper. So you don't know the authors of this paper, and the authors also do not know you. And then there's what we call open review. So both authors and reviewers know each other's identity, and it promotes transparency and accountability, because I cannot give insulting comments because I know that this person knows me. Okay? So then the editorial review, the journal, as I told you, I talk about the editor. Here we assess the manuscript for scope, quality, ethical compliance, and suitability before sending it for peer review. The editor may reject if the manuscript does not meet the basic standards, okay? So this is the peer review process. This is the peer review decision tree. So manuscript is submitted, it undergoes editorial screening. So it is either rejected out of scope, or if it is poor quality, or it is sent to 1 to 3 reviewers. So the result of the review can either be accept, which is maybe not common, minor review, major review, or reject. Okay? Understand the review process to set realistic expectations and respond constructively to the reviewers. What happens is you don't have to agree with everything that the reviewers suggest. So sometimes there are cases where you would explain why you used that methodology, why you used that analytical method, instead of defending everything or just accepting everything and changing everything that you. So when you are responding to reviewers, you need to reply respectfully, address every comment, disagree professionally, use a revision matrix, and be concise and clear. So you can have a table that we call like a rebuttal, where you have a table where you have the comment, how you have addressed it, and the page where you have addressed it. So that is the revision matrix, okay? So it's very easy for the reviewer to know, okay, this is the question I asked, this is how they have addressed it, this is the page. So they can easily go there very easily to go and find. So a revision matrix, there's an example down here where the sample size is small. So that is the review comment. Your response is thank you. We agree that the sample size is small. The action that you have taken is the action that you have taken, and sometimes you add another column where you can put the page where that was done. Okay, so that can help you when you are addressing review comments, so that it's very easy for them to see very fast how you reacted to those. Once a paper is published, you can now create account on any of this. And again, I will share this. So you can have an account on ORCID, which is your online, basically your online CV, Google Scholar, ResearchGate, Publons, LinkedIn. Just, you can create pages on some of this, and then that helps your work to be seen more, and people are able to read and see what it is that you are doing. Now, I am not going to talk about this because then we are not going to do that. That is also maybe not very important, but I want to finish by giving you this: that when you are organizing when you are organizing to start writing your manuscript, some people don't know where to start from. So I always tell people, before you start writing, start by preparing all the figures and tables, and even give them captions. You've not started writing. You are developing them so that in the process of your writing, you're not going to stop to generate a table or stop to plot a graph. No, you have them already there. So prepare your figures and tables, then write the method section. If you start with the introduction, then the procrastination will kick in. So after preparing your figures and tables, write the methods, because this is just describing what you did, so it's not very difficult to do. Then write the results, because you already have the results. Why don't we start from the unknown, from the known, moving towards the unknown? So write the results, then write the discussion. Sometimes you can write them together, depending on the journal. Some journals will tell you that you write the results and discussions together, but some journals will tell you write the results and then write the discussion separately. So after writing the results, write the discussion, write a clear conclusion. Then after that is when I want you to write a compelling introduction. You know why? You will write now an introduction that introduces the entire paper. Otherwise, you might write an introduction, and then when you write the other parts, you read your introduction and realize, I don't think this paragraphs or this 2-page or this 1-page introduces the results that I have written. Okay? So write a compelling introduction, then write up the abstract, compose a concise and descriptive title. Again, as I said, all along you could have been just using, you could have just been working with a working title. Okay? Then select keywords for indexing, write the acknowledgement, and then write your references. And with that, you have your manuscript that is ready for submission. Thank you. I just want to run you through a raw manuscript that has not been submitted, so that whoever has never published, because sometimes I'm talking about this and you ask, what does a manuscript look like? So you give me 1 minute to run you through a manuscript that we have been working on, and then you see what it looks like, and then we have a short plenary. Yes, as yet you can ask as I look for that. Yes, Badmos, if you have a question, kindly go ahead and ask.
Hello, sir. Thank you very much for the wonderful session, sir. In fact, that was the exact question I asked the other time that you told me that it is the other way around. I said it that you start from the method, the figures, and this is exactly what you showed now. So I was somehow confused that this was the question, and this is the same way you have attended to it here now, sir. So I don't know. The other time, this was the question I had, that you start from your methodology, from the figures and everything, just the way you the last slide you showed before the thank you slide, sir. That was what I was referring to.
Okay, I want us to get two things different here. In this case, here we are now already writing, because then we have even collected the data, we have everything figured out. Now we are just writing, we are reporting what we already have done. The other side, as I was saying, we are still conceptualizing the idea. So when you're conceptualizing the idea, you must figure out what the problem is before you figure out how to solve it. Now, in this case, we have conceptualized the idea and we have even solved it. Now we are reporting. Now, in the actual writing, it's easier to start from the known as you move towards the unknown. You know, when you get to a point where you are now writing the paper, it means that you have all this information. So this information is already figured out, and that's why you are writing this paper. At the conceptualization level, you must start by thinking of what the problem is, and then you look at how to solve it. But when you have solved this problem and you have collected this data, when you are writing, it's easier to start by telling us, this is how I solved this problem, and this is the results that I found. Yes, Ibrahim Omar.
Yes, thank you, Prof, for your good presentation. I have two questions related for what you have suggested now. My first question is, you said first you have to prepare for your manuscript before you review the guideline of the journal. So if I prepare my manuscript before I review the guideline, for example, after when I complete my manuscript and I review the guideline, I saw the guideline order me to cite and to follow the reference of zero note, for example, and I used EndNote. So should I change for that reference? My second question is, what is the main point that most reviews look after when I send my paper? Thank you.
Okay, am I muted? Let me see. Oh, I'm not muted. So I'm looking for a manuscript to show you, but yes, you have two questions. One of them is I'm suggesting that you have to prepare your manuscript, then you check where to send it. And then when you are checking where to send it, you realize that you have been told that you have to use a certain citation or you have to write in a certain way. The truth is, yes, you have to change, and sometimes you'll even have to change the format of your manuscript even 7 times, because every time you are sending it to a journal, that journal will have its own I'm just looking for something else. They will have their own, that journal will have its own instructions. So I always tell people, once you write, you can write your manuscript in a way that you think makes sense and write all the sections and include everything you want to include. But then when you read the review instructions, and that's why I'm also advising people that you need to use a reference manager, because with a reference manager, you don't go through the pain of doing anything. You just click the citation method, and then it's going to change everything for you. So the truth is, if you want to change, if you have done a manuscript and you realize there's something you need to change so that it conforms to the format, then yes, you have to change that, and that's why it is good to use reference manager. Sometimes if you want to look at the journal first before you can also try and say, okay, I want to submit my journal to this paper, to this journal, so let me just already develop my manuscript to follow their instructions already. That's also fine. If you already have a journal in mind that you have selected, you can go straight away and start writing, conforming to the requirements of that journal. But in the event that you prepared your journal without you prepared your manuscript without a specific journal in mind, then in that case, then you have to change to what it requires. The other thing you're asking, what do reviewers? Of course, reviewers look at. One is the editors will, even before they send it out to review, they look at, does it have, is the information in that paper, one is, does it conform to, does it fall within the scope of that journal? So if it publishes on fish diseases and you are sending something that is not related to fish diseases, they will tell you this is beyond our scope, that is out of the scope of this journal, so we are not publishing it. So the scope is one thing. The second thing is, of course, the format. Does it follow the format? If yes, yes. And then it looks at the amount of data and how it has been presented. So if the data is too little, then the journal, the editor will just throw it out. They will say whatever is presented here is too little to warrant publication. When it is sent out to the reviewers are now going to look at what was the actual problem that you tried to solve. Did you convince us in your background that this was an actual gap, and how did you solve it? So then we'll go to the methodology. Were the methods sound, and the results that you presented, were you able to get them out of the methods that you described? If I doubt, whether these results could be obtained from the methods you described, then I will start doubting your results, and it's very easy for me to throw your paper away. And even after looking at the results, how did you interpret these results? Did you interpret them correctly, scientifically, and did you compare them with what other people have done before? And what conclusions did you draw out of the data that you collected? Now, I also wanted to show you just a raw manuscript that has not been submitted. This one is already published, so I can use it. This was out of my PhD work. So this is what the manuscript looks like. I've just numbered them. The journal requires you to number the line numbering. So you number all the lines. So this is just the title, then the authors, including their email addresses and their ORCID numbers. Then this is their affiliation, where this paper was, where each author comes from. So the title, the authors, their affiliation, and then I have my abstract. This journal requires you to repeat this. So you start by writing all that up there, then you come and repeat it somewhere. You come and repeat it down here. So again, the information up there, you see the asterisks against the name of the corresponding author. Then the abstract follows, then the keywords, then the introduction here. Then the introduction goes, for them, they require you to do an introduction of at least 2 pages. So the introduction, materials and methods here. And then now just how everything else was done, the methods and the discussion and all that. So I was just showing you what a raw manuscript looks like, so that somebody will not ask, I don't know what a manuscript looks like. What is a manuscript? A manuscript is just this raw Word document that you will send out, and then this people will edit, and then it looks very nicely when it is finally published. So this was my raw manuscript that I sent out for publication. It was published last year. So, and then the discussion, after discussion, then we go down to what? Acknowledgements, author contribution, so that each person, what did they do? Conflict of interest, ethical, all this the journal will require. If they require, they will let you know that this is what they require. And then the references. So that is what a raw manuscript looks like. Does anybody have any question? Most of them are villas with materials. Yeah, so
Hello,
I will.
sir. Hello.
Yes.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yes.
Sorry, sir. From what you just showed now, sir, I can see
Yeah.
that the line, each of the sentence, it has a number. You numbered. Why is that, sir? From what you just showed.
Yeah. There are some journals that will require you that after you have written your manuscript, you have to do numbering, line numbering, so that when the reviewers are giving you comments, they will tell you line 72, line 73. So it's very easy for them now to tell you which line to go to. So it's very easy. But some journals will not want you to do the line numbering. So that's why I was saying it depends on the journal. When you go to the journal instruction, they will tell you whether you need to number them or you don't need to number them. So this one, after you've written your paper, you will just come to line numbering, insert line numbering, and then you will insert line numbers, and then all of them will be numbered. So it will number the lines for you the way you want. Okay, so you see there's line numbering. I'm looking at it. I'm just trying to see. It's always somewhere. So once you click on it, then it is going to number all the lines. So I don't know whether it is. So you don't do it manually one by one. Yeah, you see under layout here, you have line numbers. So when you click on it, it is going to either continuous, or you can restart on each page, restart each section. So depending on what the journal requires, some journals will tell you that you will number them continuously so that it just goes from one to the end, or some of them will say every page you restart. So you can instruct Word to do that for you. But some journals will not tell you to number this line, the lines. Some will require you to number their lines so that when the reviewers are giving you comment, they will say, go to line number 47 to line number 42 to number 46, so that you go directly to that, and then you will see what they want you to address there. And also, when you are responding to their comments, it's very easy for you to tell them that I have inserted that underline number this to line number that. So some journals will tell you to number their the lines. Some will not tell you to number. So it depends on the instruction that the journal is saying. Yes, I will share this. I will all the materials that I've used for this this training will be shared with you, and the recording will also be shared. So, yes. Aha, yes, I think is there anything else that somebody wants to say? It does not have to be a question. It could be some feedback and also anything else as we now draw to a close.
Thank you, Dr. Some instances, maybe it's not really establishing as such. For example, the PhD student work, for example, and a PhD student in Kenya is required to have at least published 2 publications before it depends the work. Now, there are some suggestions that one of the objectives of the PhD work can be established as a publication. You can extract one of the objectives and all the data and all that, and then you establish as you can publish as a publication, and then also extract another one. 2 objectives, you publish them, and then you depend the rest of the work. And then how is it? How is that?
That is a bit difficult to answer, but then I will answer it by saying that this is where the supervisor works with the student to help them know what is sufficient, because you don't want to throw in a paper there that does not have sufficient data. So you can say, okay, I think I have each objective can stand alone and can suffice to publish a paper out of. Or sometimes you look at your objectives and say, I think if I publish this alone, then this data is not sufficient. So I'm going to combine objective 1 and objective 2 to publish one paper, then I combine the other 2 objectives, publish another paper. Or sometimes there are universities that even allow you that even as you go on with your research, you can already publish a systematic review or a narrative review out of your PhD. As long as it is related to your PhD, they will count that as a publication out of your PhD. So this depends on the amount of data that each objective holds. Yes, Jalia.
Yes, Doctor. Doctor, I want to thank you so much for this wonderful online research workshop, because sincerely next week we are going for research conference for memorizing Dr. Elias research, scholarly research for Bugema University. Doctor, sincerely, God has used you to come in this middle of period where we want to adjust our journal paper. Thank you so much, Doctor. I'm the one who requested for materials so that I can adjust my journal paper. Sincerely, God bless you, the work of your hands. So, dear colleagues, we invite you for the research conference, which is scheduled on 30th August to 1st September at Bugema University main campus, Gayaza Road, so that you can enjoy the world of academia. Thank you so much, Doctor. I remain Nanyengo Jalia Kasasa, student of Bugema University, Masters Education, Curriculum and Instruction. Good afternoon.
Thank you. You are welcome. We will share this. We'll also share the recording. So I hope you find this useful, and there's no problem. TCC does not restrict. You can use this material for your training and also guiding your students, because then if we are going to tell you never to use them, then why are we even, trying to empower scholars if we are still telling them not to use the materials to train and also empower themselves? So this will be shared. You can use it for training, as long as you're using it for non-commercial purposes. You still can use it also to train other people and strengthen your knowledge. There's no problem with that. So you are welcome. This will be shared, including the recording. Yes, so I will allow us to close this here, and I'll take it back to Ebenezer to give us a way forward on how then we move from here. I think this has been a long sitting. Yes, Ebenezer.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nicholas. Thank you for the training today, and I really hope that everyone had something to take away from today's training. And to the participants, so much for joining us today. And I really hope this discussion today has provided you with insights and that you can apply in your research journey. So before we conclude, I would like to take a moment to share some of the support resources available to you through the TCC Africa Training Center in Communication. First of all, training is part of our calendar activities, which happens almost monthly. Training updates are shared on the WhatsApp community and social media channels, TC website, and whatnot. So I had already shared some of the links in the chat box. You can feel free to go and check it. Although before we close, I'll also still be sharing again. We also offer different trainings, webinars, and different aspects of the broader research life cycle and academia, which are free for the community members. So be sure to keep an eye out for those community updates or social media. We also provide access to our platform where you can find training materials, guides, and scholarly communication resources to help you strengthen your research and writing skills. We also have a WhatsApp community, which is a space to share opportunities, resources, training announcements, and to stay connected with fellow researchers and also the TCC Africa team. I encourage you to participate and also share opportunities, workshops, webinars that you feel free, you feel that you benefit the researchers in the community, so that we can do this together. On the other hand, we also have a podcast, Zungumzo. It's a scholarly conversations podcast where we host conversations with researchers and experts who share insights on various areas in academia. If you're also interested in learning how to create sustainable podcasts using easily accessible tools, please write me through the admin email and share the email before in the chat box as well. So you can also follow the Simple Academic on TikTok, where we share short and practical tips on academic writing and publishing. We also host mentorship sessions such as every Thursday and Sunday or when convenient at 8 p.m. ET to support you with your research journey. So if you have topics beforehand you'd like us to cover, you can also let us know in the community groups, which for now I hope you have joined or requested to join, because shortly after this I'll be letting you into the groups if you had shared your request to join. That is it for the resources. I also just wanted to mention that the certificates will be shared in a few weeks, in a week's time, preferably next week, Friday, due to the volume that needs to be processed. And I will share the recordings and notes as well via the email, but also look out on the community announcements for the recordings. And that is it from my end. And on behalf, I also shared a second. Also shared a link that you can tell us, give us your feedback. Please make sure to reach out, fill the feedback form so that we can also know which areas we can adjust the trainings and whatnot as well. So that is it from my end. On behalf of TCC, I would like to thank you for your time and sharing your experience with us. I'd also like to thank Dr. Outa for his insights. Please look out for our mentorship sessions with him on TikTok. And that is it from our end. Thank you so much and goodbye. I will leave the meeting room open for a few minutes in case of any inquiries. Just feel free to ask any questions, that is, if you have any. And thank you so much. I'll leave it for me a few minutes. Please also make sure that you have filled in your attendance, because that is how we are going to consider who is going to get the certificate and who is not going to. So make sure to fill the attendance list. For those who have requested to join the WhatsApp communities, don't worry. I will accept you all in a while. Don't worry, you'll be able to access the subgroups. Yes. Dalia, do you have any inquiry?
Yes, I have an inquiry. Hello?
I'm listening. Yes. Listening.
I raised a question on the WhatsApp about my title, which you said is a bit broad. So I was requesting how to be helped on refining it.
Not quite clear. May you please repeat the question? I beg your pardon.
Yes, I raised I wrote my title on the chat box, which you later on responded that is vague and broad. So I was requesting to be helped on how to refine it to be more clear.
Okay, so in anything pertaining research and your work, when you can join the community, we will be able to access. Dr. Nicholas is there for your mentorship, so that's all fine. You can reach out to him. You can also reach out to me via my inbox, and I can share with you how to reach out to him, and he can be able to help you. Is that okay?
Thank you.
It's a pleasure. For the recordings again, you will be able to get them by emails, and as well in the WhatsApp communities when you'll be able, when I will let you in. You just stay tuned and I will share it with you. Yes, you, and you can reach out to the TCC email for TCC Africa. I am answering Nasteha Ahmed. Yes, we do, and you can reach out to the TCC email for more information. It's info@TCC Africa, and you can reach out. Just put everything on the chat at the moment. Is there any other question before I end the session? Thank you very much. Please note the recordings and as well as the slides. I will share them via your emails. And thank you so much for attending today's training, and have a wonderful day as well. I will leave the meeting room open for a few minutes before I end the meeting today. Have a wonderful